Slaughtering through American horror, starting from the witch's coven. Chapter 21, A town infested with evil spirits. What about during the day? Is there any danger during the day? Rob asked. During the day, it's okay, but there's still an indescribable sense of panic. Andy said with lingering fear, the families in the town who can afford it have all moved away during this period, leaving only those of us who are too poor to afford food to live in the town. In fact, we have tried. When the thieves could not be caught for a while, the people in the town jointly cast an identical golden arm. But when we bravely wanted to send a new golden arm to Heather's cemetery, we found that the other party's body had disappeared. At this point, Andy recalled the frightening scene and drank a large glass of wine before continuing. Although we were scared, we still wanted to leave the golden arm there so that Heather could see it when she came back. But to everyone's disappointment, the footsteps and roars at night continued. When we went to see it the next day, the new golden arm was still there, and it was broken into several pieces. Heather didn't accept it. All she wanted was the real golden arm. Rob glanced at the real golden arm in his backpack and said calmly, "So, since the accident, Heather's body has been missing, right? Even during the day?" "Yes. Just like when she used an axe to kill her husband who took her golden arm. But this time, she will never rest in peace." "I see." Rob then asked some more questions. For example, where is Heather buried, where was her residence during her lifetime, etc. After asking almost everyone, he said goodbye to Andy with an expectant look on his face. "It has been confirmed that the evil spirit that cursed us is Heather. She has a physical body, but she doesn't show up during the day." Rob returned to Madison and said, "At night, according to Andy, Heather would be more dangerous. In addition, you and I are still cursed, so our best choice is to find Heather during the day and get rid of her completely." Madison agreed. Evil spirits rarely leave the area where they moved around in their lifetime. If you look carefully at Heather's former home, the cemetery, and other places she liked to stay in her lifetime, you'll find something. If all else fails, we still have this. Rob patted the golden arm in his backpack and said, "If Heather knew we had returned the golden arm to her, she would definitely show up with gratitude." "Indeed." Madison curled her lips and said, "Let's get going now. Once we get rid of the evil spirit, we'll leave quickly. Rude residents, bad decoration, low-quality drinks, everything here is too boring." Rob nodded. The two left the bar and were about to get in the car. A policeman wearing a camel-colored uniform and a cowboy hat suddenly appeared, stopped them, and asked, "You two look strange, are you just passing by or what?" Alpena County has such a small population that outsiders stand out. Generally speaking, when local police see outsiders, they will question them for safety reasons. After all, America is a land of talented people and beautiful scenery. Who knows if the person who comes here may be a master who has attained enlightenment in Longchang. Rob didn't interrupt, leaving everything to the charming Madison. "I heard that Alpena County has beautiful scenery. My boyfriend and I are planning to visit here," Madison explained with a smile. The policeman quickly let down his guard and said enthusiastically, "Beautiful lady, I hope you can gain a good memory here." Before leaving, he gave Madison a business card, telling her she could call him anytime if she had any problems. Watching the police drive away in the police car, Madison threw away the business card and got on the driveway. "Let's go." Rob started the car. The wheels rolled over the business card and headed toward Greentown. Surrounded by sugar maple trees and red oaks, Greentown looks like a beautiful place, perfect for camping and vacation. When Rob and Madison drove here, they saw a desolate and deserted scene. Occasionally, one or two people appeared in the field of vision, moving quickly with panicked looks on their faces, not caring at all about the unfamiliar faces that appeared here. Language is inadequate to describe the situation. Only by seeing it with your own eyes can you truly understand the current situation of the town where evil spirits are rampant as described by Andy. With accurate information, Rob and his companions did not disturb the residents here and drove directly to the first target Andy told them, Heather's Cemetery. Although it was daytime, the cemetery with rows of tombstones still looked very eerie. Of course, this is true all over the world. Except for the Martyrs' Cemetery. After getting off the car, Rob's face became tense, and Madison also changed from her previous relaxed look to become extremely serious. Although Fiona taught them the solution, they had experienced the curse of the evil spirit themselves, and this time they were facing the evil spirit itself, so they could not be careless at all. When we arrived at the cemetery that the townspeople had rebuilt for Heather, we could see that the soil behind the tombstone had been dug up, revealing the coffin, and the owner inside had long since disappeared. Did you find anything? Rob asked Madison. Although the latter does not have abilities such as the clairvoyance or the yin-yang eyes, the witch's perception still allows her to discover clues that ordinary people cannot detect. It has the same smell as the female corpse in the curse we encountered, but even stronger. Madison looked around the cemetery with a serious expression. It doesn't look like it's here now. Not here? Looks like I have no choice but to use my own methods. Not wanting to wait until late at night, Rob unzipped his backpack, took out the golden arm, and waved it while shouting, "Hey! Miss Heather, I brought you your golden arm, come and get it." The cold wind howled, blowing up the fallen leaves in the cemetery. After a few minutes, there was no movement. "It's obviously a little far away now," Rob said, lowering his golden arm. "I thought it would appear in front of us with a whoosh." Generally speaking, evil spirits are not as powerful during the day as they are at night, Madison explained. Since it has never left this town, its activities are limited to that area. We can't find it in the cemetery, so we'll look for it in its original home. Certainly. Rob put away his golden arm again and started the car again. Not long after, a dusty house that looked like it had not been lived in for a long time appeared before them. This is the former home of Mr. and Mrs. Heather. After the strange incident in which her husband died tragically at home and Heather's body slept beside him with her golden arms around her, no one dared to take over the house, not even close, and it has been vacant until now. The sound of the engine shutting down was heard. Rob and Madison got out of the car, pushed open the dusty door and just entered. Rob was about to use his old trick to take out the golden arm. A familiar and creepy voice has sounded. Hiss, my golden arm. Chapter 22, Another Confrontation. It's here. Rob was surprised at first, then delighted. Finally found the real owner. Madison knew. Madison knew what Rob wanted to say and quickly recalled the spell of the exorcism spell, waiting for the real target to appear so as to cast it on him. Hiss, give me back my golden arm. The roar from the evil spirit Heather was getting closer and closer. The sound of heavy footsteps rang in the ears of the two. Rob was trying to identify the direction of the footsteps. Suddenly, the floor beneath my feet made a cracking sound. Rob's pupils shrank, and before he could open his mouth, he reacted faster than ever before, hugged Madison and flew forward. Next second. Snap! Along with the sharp edge, a huge crack was cut on the floor where the two were originally. If they were still there before, their feet would probably be gone. Bang! 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 In just a few breaths, the cracks on the floor grew bigger and bigger. Soon, the female corpse that Rob and the others were very familiar with crawled out from under the floor. What was different from before was that this time the female corpse named Heather was holding a long-handled axe with a blood-stained blade in her one arm. Give me back, my golden arm. Heather's blood-stained eyes looked straight at Rob, or to be exact, at the golden arm in the other's backpack. The heavy footsteps sounded again. Hattie held a long axe and rushed towards Rob with a ferocious look. Bang! Bang. Bang. Rob fired. Although bullets cannot kill Heather, they can still stop her from taking action. Ding ding ding. The yellow shell fell to the ground. Although Heather was unharmed as she rushed towards Rob, she had to retreat under the impact of the bullet. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Madison, who had already discussed a countermeasure with Rob, opened his hands and quickly recited an exorcism spell towards Heather. Unperceivable to ordinary people, with every exorcism spell Madison recited, the spiritual light in her body fluctuated rapidly. Correspondingly, Heather, who had just looked like she could never be killed, trembled all over, as if an invisible hand was pulling her towards the unknown depths of darkness, and a roar of anger and fear suddenly came out of her mouth. Heather struggled desperately. Madison was also under tremendous pressure from the counterattack, and the further he chanted the spell, the more difficult it became. Suddenly, the whole room was in turmoil. The shrill screams of evil spirits, the mysterious sounds of witchcraft, the overlapping illusions, and the continuous invisible shock waves. So put together. Fortunately, Rob's spirituality was awakened, otherwise he would have fainted facing the bizarre scene. After observing the scene, he even had enough energy to grab a baseball bat with peeling paint in the house. He endured the discomfort and quickly rushed to Heather, who was holding her head and screaming, and raised the baseball bat to beat her hard. Heather focused all her energy on fighting the exorcism curse and could only let Rob act arrogantly in front of her. It was fine at the beginning. Although Rob hit it so hard that the rotten flesh flew everywhere, it actually had no effect. However, Rob quickly changed his mind and punched its legs hard. Snap! Heather's knees made a crackling sound as they could no longer bear the weight. It was trying its best to fight against the exorcism spell, but suddenly it staggered and fell to the ground uncontrollably. This undoubtedly broke the balance in the confrontation. Seeing Madison's voice getting louder and louder as she chanted the exorcism spell, and Heather, who was kneeling on the ground, becoming increasingly worse, Rob was about to add more strength. A high-pitched scream suddenly burst out of Heather's mouth. It threw all its strength into a desperate attempt, swung its intact left arm violently, and the long axe in its hand passed by Rob like a sharp arrow and flew towards Madison at an incredible speed. A piercing sonic boom sounded. Madison, who was chanting a spell, was startled when he saw the extremely sharp axe flying towards him. She was very clear that if she was hit by this blow, she would definitely be split in half, so she quickly stopped the spell. At the last moment, she moved her mind and the long axe narrowly passed by her. Madison's face was covered in sweat. Just as he was getting scared, the roar as loud as raging waves sounded again. Heather, no longer affected by the exorcism spell, raised her left hand and grabbed the baseball bat that was hitting her again. Rob tried to shake him off with both hands, but found that the other party was stronger than he imagined. Even in the daytime, Heather's true form was much stronger than what she had seen in her previous cursed state. Seeing that the baseball bat was about to be taken away, Rob, who was struggling with it, suddenly let go. Heather couldn't help but step back. Taking advantage of this gap, Rob pulled out his gun again and fired bullets at Heather, forcing her to continue retreating. Madison. Just as he was about to speak, a sharp sound of breaking through the air interrupted everything. Heather repeated her old trick by throwing a baseball bat at him. In desperation, Rob could only roll over and dodge. No longer bothered, Heather ignored Rob. For the first time, it temporarily put aside its obsession with the golden arm and turned its attention to Madison. In this woman, it felt a real threat to itself and had to get rid of her as soon as possible. Tap, tap, tap. Rob's previous action of smashing his knee did not affect Heather's actions. She ran towards Madison at an unimaginable speed. By this time, Madison no longer had the energy to recite the spell word for word. Her heart pounding, she thrust her palms forward, a huge burst of consciousness erupting like a tornado. With a whoosh, Heather flew backwards and landed on the gap that was previously opened by the axe. With a loud thud, Heather fell down and did not climb out. The first floor returned to calm. Madison, panting, stared at the floor around him, fearing that a rotten hand would appear somewhere. "Be careful, Madison. You may be its primary target." Rob, who had gotten up from the ground, quickly warned, "Stand on the sofa quickly. You will have some cushioning later." Madison did as she was told, and just as she lifted her foot, a dark, rotten hand reached out from under her body, with its sharp fingers tightly gripping her ankle. Then, boom! After Madison screamed, she fell down suddenly and disappeared quickly. "Shit!" Rob rushed over anxiously and was about to stick his head down into the crack. Sudden flames shot up from beneath the floor. Rob, who was almost burned, was not surprised but happy. When the flames died down, he reached down and yelled, "Madison!" A slender hand tightly grasped his hand. Rob lifted it upward. Although Madison looked a little disheveled, he was not seriously injured and was pulled up by him. Chapter 23 Containment. Under suffocating pressure, outstanding witches often awaken new powers. That's exactly what's happening to Madison right now. To put it bluntly, the witches of Salem are all sorcerers with magical blood. They do not need to study magic day and night, they just need to try their best to tap their untapped potential. Among them, the Supreme Witch is the most talented of the group. Although Madison is not as good as the Supreme Witch, her talent is definitely among the top among all witches. In the face of life and death crisis, after taking objects with her mind, she just awakened one of the 7 formations, the control of fire. "Are you okay?" Rob asked quickly. "I'm fine." Madison looked at the fire that was still burning below, and a look of excitement appeared on his face despite the remnant of fear. Snap! The floor cracked violently again. Having learned from previous lessons, Rob and Madison retreated early. After a few breaths, Heather, who was covered in a burnt smell and looked even more disgusting and ugly, climbed up. Just as it was about to rush over again with resentment, Madison stepped forward with a look of disgust on her face and said coldly, "You disgusting and ugly old woman, go to hell." Boom! Madison focused her eyes on Heather, who was once again ablaze with fire. Although its power is not as strong as the fire that Fiona originally cast. But under Madison's continuous release of flames, Heather could only roll over and over, wailing in pain. Seeing Heather's body melting in the flames, Madison smiled confidently at Rob and said, "It looks like there's no need for the exorcism spell." However, she was soon slapped in the face. A sharp scream like that of a hellish devil came out of Heather's mouth. The next second, its body collapsed on its own. As it turned into ashes and extinguished the surrounding flames, the shadow of a one-armed woman who looked to be in her 30s, with a pretty face but a ferocious expression appeared. The wind is howling. The indoor temperature dropped suddenly. What appeared before his eyes was the true form of the evil spirit named Heather. After fighting for such a long time, the experienced Madison was about to attack Rob without being reminded, but found that Heather disappeared in the blink of an eye. Just then, a cold wind suddenly blew behind Madison's neck. She looked back warily. Sudden. A hideous face appeared right before her eyes. "Ah!" Screams were heard. No matter how brave a person is, he will inevitably be frightened at this moment. Madison, a witch, is no exception. Just as her face turned pale for a moment, Heather suddenly poured into her body without giving her time to react. Possessed by evil spirit. In an instant, Madison's shiny golden hair moved like a snake without wind, and black blood vessels popped out on her beautiful face. Uncomfortable and filthy words kept coming out of her mouth, making people feel uncomfortable. "Oh my God!" Rob, who couldn't help but burst out in Mandarin, stared at all this in a daze. It all happened so fast. In the blink of an eye, reality became like this. The situation was too critical for him to think too much. Without hesitation, Rob immediately held Madison's body and shouted loudly in her ear. "Madison, stick to yourself. Don't let the evil spirit scare you. This is your body, your home. You are going to become the supreme witch. How can you be defeated by an evil spirit? Being possessed by evil spirits is more of a battle of souls and a clash of wills. According to the normal process, evil spirits will usually use a series of behaviors such as early harassment and intimidation to make the target person panic, and only when the will is weakened to a certain extent will they possess the person. This will ensure a very high success rate. But for Heather, the current situation is already very dangerous. There is no room for it to do anything else but to possess by force. It's just that Madison, as a witch, is different from ordinary people. Although she was caught off guard at first, she quickly recovered and began to confront Heather. At this time, Rob's shouts gave her great encouragement. Think about Hermes. Think about Chanel. Think about Louis Vuitton. Think about lipstick, bags, perfume, necklaces, watches and high heels. Madison, are you willing to lose these? Think again about your dream of becoming a Hollywood star. Are you willing to be a has-been actor for the rest of your life? Or do you like to become disgusting and ugly like Heather? Then no man will be interested in you. Rob did not use the cliched plot of love to help Madison like in the movies. He has a deep understanding of the latter and every word he says goes straight to the core. Really? A long howl came out of Madison's mouth. Violent invisible waves rushed rapidly in all directions with her as the center. As Rob hurriedly retreated, he saw Heather, who was even more unreal and weaker than before, exiting Madison's body in a mess. My golden arm. At this point, the severely injured Heather can only target Rob, hoping to use his body to regain the golden arm. The incorporeal Heather still moved very quickly. Rob wanted to dodge, but found that the other party had already attached himself to him. Before his expression changed drastically. But in a moment, he unexpectedly discovered that Heather had escaped from his body in terror, and her injuries seemed to be even more serious. It is hard to imagine that the evil spirit, a symbol of terror and evil, would one day become afraid of itself. Rob glanced at the book of containment in his mind. He noticed that the moment Heather possessed him, the book of shelter, which had been silent all the time, suddenly flipped a corner, and Heather was immediately severely injured. Apparently, the book of containment that already resides here doesn't want any other beings approaching. Rob, who did not expect such a pleasant surprise, turned his attention back to reality. After 2 failed possession attempts, they no longer needed to do anything, and Heather could hardly maintain her own existence. Madison, who had just recovered and hadn't noticed what had just happened, noticed Heather's condition and recited the exorcism spell again without thinking much about it. No more accidents happened. Amid Heather's unwilling wails, its silhouette became increasingly faint. Seeing that he is about to leave this world, the book of asylum in Rob's mind suddenly moved, and the pages were officially opened. A ray of light that only he could see flew out from Heather and into the book of containment. Bite. A supernatural being has been contained, and the containment book has been updated. The initial indicators have been completed. Rob breathed a sigh of relief after receiving the reminder from the book of containment. It's finally over. Not only was it because he had solved the problem of the golden-armed evil spirit, but also because the containment mission that had been weighing on his mind for the past few days and had made him unable to sleep well was finally completed. Although it's only temporary. But the beginning is always the hardest. With the successful experience of the first time, I think the second and third times will be a lot easier. Chapter 24, Madison the Fire. Heather was killed and the curse was no longer there. Mission accomplished. Madison's first reaction was not to sigh, but to quickly take out the small mirror she carried with her and carefully look at her face. When she found that she was still as attractive as ever, she breathed a sigh of relief. The ugly woman has finally gone back to hell. Rob, find a place to wash up first. You're so dirty. Madison said, looking at her branded clothes that were all dirty from the previous fight. Rob didn't refuse. He was dirtier than Madison. Heather's house had not been occupied for a long time and the water and electricity had been cut off. After the two left here, they randomly found a house that looked pretty and clean and walked in directly. Because of the haunting, everyone in the town with some assets, except the poor, moved away in a hurry. Naturally, there was no one in the house that Rob broke into. In addition, there was sufficient water and electricity, and there were even cold food in the refrigerator. The two of them took over the house and rested here for the time being. 10 minutes later, hot water kept flowing down from Rob's head. After washing off the dust and the fatigue from running all the way and fighting with Heather, Rob, feeling refreshed, summoned the Book of Shelter. On page number 1, the blank space has now been filled. No, 001. Name Heather. Name Arc. Type, Evil Spirit. Status, Contained. Ability, Evil Spirit Possession, Evil Spirit Curse. Introduction, a woman who loves beauty very much. Whether she is alive or dead, her obsession with beauty has never weakened. After her arm was broken, the golden arm became Heather's greatest obsession. No matter who dares to take the golden arm, she will crawl out of hell and curse the thief endlessly until she gets her golden arm back. Next to the text description, there is also a lifelike portrait of Heather as an evil spirit. When Rob's eyes fell on it, he could see Heather, who had a golden arm installed on her right arm, vaguely saying happily, "My golden arm." An evil spirit was swallowed by the Book of Containment and just turned into a page inside. Rob flipped through the large number of blank pages at the back. He was surprised at the volume of the Book of Shelter and couldn't help but sigh at his own miserable fate as a worker in the future. Fortunately, the Book of Shelter is not an unscrupulous capitalist who only takes but does not give anything in return. This time, Heather was successfully taken in, and he gained 80 shelter points. Adding the 20 points gained from the previous two curses, he gained a total of 100 points from Heather. This is enough to increase one's attribute by a whole point. The returns are pretty good. So where should we invest the remaining 80 points? Heather's abilities are all related to evil spirits, and as a living person, I can't learn them even if I want to. It can only be focused on the physical and spiritual aspects. The benefits of physical fitness are self-evident. With a higher spiritual level, one can more clearly perceive non-physical supernatural creatures. It is also very important for myself, who will have to deal with the supernatural most of the time in the future. How to allocate it still needs careful consideration. Fortunately, after taking in Heather, he had some free time and there was no need to rush. Rob put away the Book of Shelter, reached for the towel beside him, and prepared to finish showering. Click. The bathroom door suddenly opened. Rob was startled and looked back quickly, and saw a blindingly white body without any cover appeared in front of him. The body is well proportioned, long where it should be long, and thin where it should be thin. Coupled with that aggressive and beautiful face, it can definitely give men a great impact. In this place, the only person like this could be Madison. Ahem. Rob was stunned for several seconds, then he remembered and quickly covered himself with a bath towel, shifted his gaze and said, "Madison, is there something wrong?" After the thrilling experience, Madison, who was in urgent need of relaxing, walked in openly, turned around, showed Rob her excellent figure and said, "You should know what I want, Rob. Do you need me to take the initiative? I don't mind being the one on top." "Ahem, Madison, I have a girlfriend." Rob, who was a little overwhelmed, said hurriedly. Madison stepped closer. "What's the problem? Does it mean we can't score a goal with a goalkeeper? Besides, She came to Rob, who had no choice but to avoid her, and like a female gangster, she raised his chin and said with a determined attitude, "Rob, do you want to guard the Black Widow for the rest of your life? Believe me, after what I've been through, I absolutely mean it now. Come on, Rob." The temptation of the fairy keeps echoing in my ears. Just as Rob was about to suppress it with great willpower, the hot and delicate body of Ketone was already pressing on him. The next sentence was the last straw that broke the camel's back. "Rob, you're not gay, are you? Or not gay at all? I heard that Asians. There is no after." Madison's incendiary words instantly set off everything for Rob. In order to prove himself, Rob did not hesitate and summoned the Book of Confinement. Add some. Physique, 1.2 1.3. Plus. Physique, 1.3 1.4. Rob. A fierce battle was going on in the house where the owner was away. Afterwards, when Madison, who kept begging for mercy, fell asleep on him with a tired and satisfied look on her face, Rob nodded with satisfaction. It was worth his previous action. Although this goes against what I thought about after returning home. But since it was a matter of dignity, he couldn't afford to think too much. The results turned out to be very good. Not only did the old SIG bow down to him, but Rob also found an unexpected reward. What's going on? The pages of the shelter book in my mind suddenly made a rustling sound, very similar to the state when Heather was sheltered before. Puzzled, Rob opened the book of shelter. Then, he saw a surprising scene. After Heather, another new subject appeared on the page. It was Madison. No, 002. Name Madison Montgomery. Type, Salem Witch. Status, indirect containment. Ability, mind control, control of fire. Introduction, even though she is restricted by her physical illness, Madison's witch qualifications are still among the best among the witches of Salem. But be careful of her arrogance, selfishness, cruelty, and ruthlessness. Perhaps, she needs a real man to subdue her. Is this what she has always been looking forward to? Next to him, a lifelike portrait of Madison, wearing a black evening gown and a hat with a veil that half covered her face, appeared before him. Etc. What is going on? Chapter 25 Madison's Special Containment. Rob looked at all this in confusion. He had no idea Madison would appear on the page. Isn't it the only way to contain the ghost by killing it? Just like Heather just now. Now that's nothing. Rob lowered his head and looked at Madison, who was naked in his arms in reality. Breathing is steady and body temperature is normal. He is clearly a living person, so how come he was taken away by the Book of Shelter? Rob suddenly thought of something and looked at the status column on the page. Compared to Heather's contained, Madison's is special containment. Are there different kinds of containment? By special, do you mean Madison is like this now? Rob looked at the lovely person in his arms again. After calming down and sensing carefully, he suddenly discovered something strange. Compared to before, he now seems to have a clearer perception of Madison. Even if he closed his eyes or even went to a place far away from the other person, he could still sense Madison's presence and even her condition. Of course, one cannot decide the other person's life or death, thoughts and will, etc. Is this another form of containment? Achieve it in a one-step approach? I don't know if other creatures besides humans can achieve this. The elegant and noble vampire lady, the tall and fit wolf girl, the seductive female devil, the unique female ghost. Ahem. You can't let your thoughts become more perverted. Rob glared at the Book of Containment with rage. It's all because of this thing. Why don't you learn good things and suddenly come up with such an unconventional style of painting? What special containment? Bah. Etc. It doesn't seem impossible. Rob stared at the Book of Containment. In Madison's ability column, the two abilities mind control and fire control are shining, indicating that he can spend containment points to awaken the ability. Awakening ability? Rob's eyes lit up. He felt a little regretful that he didn't get much from Heather before. Unexpectedly, not only could he make up for it now, but he was also very familiar with it, which just happened to correspond to Madison's two abilities. So, under special shelter circumstances, you can also spend shelter points to learn the other person's abilities. For a moment, Rob thought of vampire ladies, wolf girls, and female demons. Receive. Back to reality. Rob selected the abilities with great interest. It costs 50 containment points to awaken the first ability, and the second ability is even more expensive. I spent 20 points in the previous fight with Madison, and I have 60 points left. This means that you can only awaken one ability. Rob was very familiar with both abilities. Mind control is like telekinesis in novels, and it can be said to be a powerful ability that can do anything. Controlling the flame is just as literal as it sounds. It is worth noting that it has a great killing effect on supernatural creatures such as evil spirits. Thinking of the screams of the evil spirit covered in flames under the gaze of Fiona and Madison, Rob quickly made a decision. If it were a person, he would definitely choose to control him with his mind. But when he had to deal with a large number of spirits later, Rob chose to control fire, which was more threatening to the spirits. 50 shelter points are crossed out. As the pages of the Book of Shelter were automatically opened, Rob quickly mastered the knowledge of controlling fire without any unfamiliarity. Rob opened his eyes and looked at the curtains not far away. As a ray of flame ignited in his pupils, a fierce flame also ignited on the curtains. Rob's mind moved again, and the burning fire was extinguished again. The only evidence of the flames were the blackened marks on the curtains. Yes, wherever you look, flames will be lit. Although it is not as accurate as Fiona lighting all the candles in the hall with a wave of her hand, it is definitely enough in battle. But Rob opened his palm and looked at a ball of fire rising from his palm, frowning a little. With the same fire, Madison's performance is much stronger than mine, not to mention Fiona. Plus, the duration is also very short. Compared with the witches, I can only be regarded as a castrated version. As time passed, the flame on the palm became weaker and weaker, and soon dissipated on its own. Rob rubbed his brows, feeling the spiritual energy in his body being consumed, and said to himself, so, the strength of ability is also closely related to spirituality. The higher the spirituality, the stronger the flames you can cast. After resting for a while and waiting for the spiritual energy in his body to be replenished, Rob invested the remaining 10 collection points into spiritual energy without hesitation, and his personal panel was updated again. Number 000. Name, Rob. Type, Human. Physique, 1.4. Spiritual, 0.3. Ability, Control of Fire. Containment point, 0. Introduce : Compared to the beginning, Rob can now easily deal with many people even without American IAI. And this is just the change brought about by one containment. Rob summoned fire again, and after some attempts he found that although it was only slightly stronger than before, his idea was correct. Spirituality is important when it comes to ability. Of course, physical fitness cannot be neglected either. I am not an evil spirit. If a bullet comes down, not only myself, but also Madison will have to kneel. This is also the reason why witches and other spiritually awakened people, even though they possess all kinds of strange abilities, still remain dormant in modern society. However, evil spirits and ghosts that ordinary people cannot see, whose heads are full of evil thoughts, have little rationality, and are not afraid of thermal weapons, do not care about these things. Just like the evil spirit Heather, who was defeated by herself and Madison. After absorbing all the gains this time, Rob had just put away the fire when Madison in his arms opened her eyes. Like a beautiful snake, she immediately wrapped herself around Rob tightly and expressed her satisfaction without any shyness. "My dear, you are really great. Any man would be happy to be praised like this by a beautiful lady. Rob is no exception." Without thinking about the supernatural anymore, he just wanted to relax and put his arm around Madison's waist, eager to try. "There's something even better, do you want to try it again?" "Certainly." After the break, Madison, feeling like she was back to her peak form, nodded excitedly. Rob took a long breath. He likes this kind of American life very much. A whole day. After dealing with Heather, Rob and Madison did not leave in a hurry. Instead, they took advantage of the owner's absence to turn the house upside down. There were traces of fighting everywhere, including the living room, bedroom, bathroom, balcony, and even the lawn outside. This can be considered as a small reward for helping the other party to eliminate the evil spirit. I think the owner of the house will not blame me when he finds out. Chapter 26 Road Trip. The next day. Refreshed, Rob and Madison arrive at Heather's former home. Instead of worshipping each other, the two of them used the smelting equipment left by her husband to melt the golden arm. After Heather was institutionalized, the golden arm became a harmless object. No one wants to keep the stuff made of real gold. Wouldn't it be better to sell it for money? Considering that the people in this place are very afraid of the golden arm, no one dares to buy it. Rob planned to melt the golden arm back into the shape of gold bars and then sell it. Half an hour later. After the operation was completed, the golden arm no longer existed. Instead, there were 3 gold bars weighing 1 kilogram each. Unlike the previous life, which was affected by a series of events such as war and turbulent world situation, the price of 1 gram of gold soared to $60 or $70, more than double that of 10 years ago. In the era that Rob lives in, the price of gold is still stable at around $40. By this calculation, the golden arm is worth about 120,000 yuan. This is a considerable income. No wonder Heather's husband lost everything and even regretted it and wanted to take the golden arm back then. It is no wonder that outsiders who heard the news took the risk to come and steal the golden arm. Greed destroyed them. Even if there was only one person left and he ran all the way to New Orleans, and even transferred the golden arm to Rob, he would still die tragically under the curse. In the end, Rob and Madison got the upper hand. Carrying 3 gold bars, Rob and his companion drove to the jewelry store in the county center. Although the two did not have legal documents to prove the source of the gold, every place was welcoming to their purchase of gold. Plus, Alpena County has a very lax policy in this regard. Although the price was slightly lowered, Rob still sold the gold successfully. Splitting it in half with Madison, he got almost $60,000. This is definitely a huge amount of money for young Americans, whose finances are in the negative most of the time. Rob was pleased. This trip not only helped me to meet the mission targets and improve my abilities, but also provided me with a good bit of extra income and physical comfort. The absolute winner. For a long time, I will no longer have to face the embarrassing situation of using girls' money when living in the United States. Rob, you've finally come out, so don't rush home. How about a road trip? Madison, who also earned a good income, looked at Rob and said excitedly. Rob was stunned. Road trip? Yeah. A road trip just for you and me. Madison came close and kissed Rob on the corner of his mouth. After finally leaving the boring witch academy and meeting a man who was very much her match physically and mentally, she really wanted to relax. Road trip happens to be one of the most popular ways for young Americans to travel. Drive a car with good friends, travel on the endless highway, feel the vast and magnificent natural scenery along the way, and appreciate the different cultural customs and human landscapes of each state. This is also one of the unique cultures of America. Derived from this, there are also various strange legends about murderers, cults, and even various monsters on highways, conservative towns, uninhabited areas and so on. Hollywood makes this kind of movie all the time. Generally speaking, it is a story about a group of to-be young people who were driving out for a trip. After hearing a horror rumor, they ignored the locals' advice and went to camp at the place where the incident occurred. As a result, they were attacked and went to see God. Madison played it. As for why I know. During the intermission yesterday, the two found a lot of discs in the house, including this type of movie starring Madison. Rob naturally opened it and read it. This made him more courageous in subsequent battles. Then go ahead. Rob thought about it and nodded. Now that the hanging beam above his head was temporarily gone, he also wanted to relax. You can't just think about fighting the supernatural all day long. He didn't want to die one day, look back on the past, and find that his life as a time traveler was not good at all. Luxury cars, beautiful women, and wilderness. Together, it is definitely a memory worth remembering. This can also help newcomers to integrate better into the place. Of course, it would be nice if we could encounter cult members with truly weird powers and all kinds of legendary monsters along the way, just like in the movies. For this type of task indicators, Rob naturally believes that the more the better. But before that, Rob, you still have to buy a car, Madison reminded. Rob nodded, of course. In America, where the land is vast and the population is sparse, public transportation is not dense and gas is not expensive, it is difficult to get around without a car. Almost every family has a car. Rob wanted to buy one since he would have to travel to many places in the future. It just so happens that I have a huge sum of money now. So, after driving to a car rental company that also sold cars, and after a fierce bargaining battle with the owner, Rob bought a well-equipped Chevrolet for $20,000. After driving their new car back to the county center and completing some shopping, Rob and Madison, in a good mood, officially started their road trip. They would first go south along Highway 75 to Detroit, then go west via Highway 94 to Chicago, and finally, through a series of turns on Highway 55 and Highway 12 they would finally arrive in New Orleans. Although the series of routes is not as famous as Route 66, which starts in Chicago, Illinois and ends in Santa Monica and Los Angeles, California. But it was definitely a good trip. Especially for single men and women. 3 days later, a dusty Chevrolet drove into downtown New Orleans. Sitting in the car were Rob and Madison, who were inevitably tired after the hustle and bustle. There were no accidents along the way. Except for passing through Chicago, I briefly experienced the local culture. At a gas station on the way, Madison was recognized by a group of young people who were also traveling and had nowhere to go. They wanted to drive this honest Asian male companion away, but he ended up being beaten up by him, who had a physique of 1.4 meters and was wearing American IAI. That was all that happened. There is no extra money as imagined. The only exception is the large-scale consumption of using the sky as a blanket and the ground as a bed. In this way, while dealing with the Witch Academy and searching for clues, they stopped and walked, left one deep memory after another on the earth, and experienced the baptism of nature physically and mentally. Finally, Rob and Madison, a couple who were satisfied, stepped on the accelerator and finally returned to New Orleans. Looking at the words Robichauk's School of Outstanding Girls written on the door plate, Rob honked the car horn. As always, the door opened on its own. The largest gathering place of the supernatural in New Orleans once again comes into view. Chapter 27, The Supreme Witch is Terrible Before Death. Madison, I need to tell you something. The door opened, and Rob, who was not in a hurry to go in, turned his head and said with a serious expression. Madison, who was putting on makeup, didn't even raise her head and asked, "What's wrong? You want me not to tell your Black Widow girlfriend that we had S**X? Don't worry, it won't be long before I can make her join in willingly." That's good, wait. Rob, who was almost diverted from the topic, quickly put away his longing expression and said seriously, "That's not what I want to talk about. Madison, when you go back, it's best not to tell others about your awakened new abilities, especially Fiona." Hearing this, Madison finally put down the mirror, looked up and asked in confusion, "Why?" She also wanted to show off her abilities in front of all the witches. Rob simply explained, "In every generation of Salem witches, a supreme witch emerges. The old ones grow old, and the new ones take over. But the handover between two generations of supreme witches is not so peaceful. The new young supreme witch will absorb the magic power of the previous generation of supreme witch faster until the other party dies. Think about it, what would the last supreme witch think when she witnessed her own vitality draining away? It would be fine if she was sensible. But what if she was attached to everything in the human world and was afraid of death? What would she think about the source of her own downfall? What would she do?" Madison's face fell. Growing up in Hollywood, an environment where white paper will turn black, she recognized the reality and cruelty of this society earlier than her peers. Judging from her own experience, she continued thoughtfully, "If I were the supreme witch, I would kill the next generation of successors to stop my own decline." Rob said meaningfully, "As for Fiona, we can get a glimpse of her attitude towards her biological daughter, Cordelia. So, Madison, don't expose your talent. If you really can't, you can tell others about your heart murmur symptoms. After all, you know me and I know you." In order to prevent Madison from being considered the next supreme witch by Fiona and having her throat slit as originally planned, Rob tried to save her. Madison obviously listened to the persuasion. She nodded solemnly, then asked in confusion, "What does this have to do with heart murmurs?" She was not surprised that Rob knew this. After all, they had been together for some time, and she did not avoid him, and occasionally used an instrument to check her heartbeat. Rob looked at her, thought for a moment and said, "Those who become the supreme witch are always in very good health, without exception." Madison was stunned. After several seconds, she gritted her teeth and said, "FK." This news was undoubtedly a bolt from the blue for her who aspired to become the supreme witch. "Is it really like that? How do you know so much?" she asked repeatedly, somewhat unwillingly. Rob said casually, "I'll just look through the books in the academy. I'm very interested in the history of witches." Madison remained silent, knowing full well that Rob would not deliberately lie to her. "Open your eyes, Madison. You should know that there are more witches in this world than just Salem. Just because you can't become the supreme witch doesn't mean you can't become stronger. Isn't your magic power still growing rapidly during this period?" Rob looked at Madison. With his spiritual perception, he could find that in these 3 days, the witch power in Madison's body was increasing rapidly like a rocket. Apparently, this adventure accelerated the awakening and development of her witch bloodline. Rob couldn't envy her even if he wanted to. It's because he doesn't have wizard blood. Witch, the evil spirits are out. Who knows if there will be any more strange legends in the future? Maybe there is a way to cure your physiological heart murmur. Or maybe you can learn a more powerful power beyond witches. Rob comforted. "Thank you for your good words. If something like this happens, remember to call me." Madison calmed down and said, "Also, thank you for the reminder. It should be." Rob responded and drove into the manor. There, Cordelia, Zoe, Queenie, Nan, and a fat middle-aged woman in a maid outfit were already waiting. "Rob, I'm glad you're okay." As soon as Rob got out of the car, he was hugged tightly by a soft body. It was Zoe who didn't want to wait any longer. On the side, Madison, who also got out of the car, had covered up the heavy look on her face. She first glanced at Zoe, who was passionately throwing herself into Rob's arms, then noticed the strange maid in the house, and interrupted the intimacy of the two with bright eyes. "It's only been a few days, How come there's another maid? Rob, it looks like you're going to be out of a job. Hearing this, Rob, who felt a little awkward being intimate in public, patted Zoe on the back, put her down, and responded with a smile, if that's the case, then I'm so pitiful. Principal Cordelia, you won't really fire me, will you? Of course not. Delphi was just an accident. Cordelia smiled. There will always be a place for you here, Rob. That's good. Rob breathed a sigh of relief and glanced at the gloomy Delphi. This fat woman is Mrs. Lala Yuri, who has lived for more than 200 years after being cursed by a voodoo witch. Rob said that he was willing to fight a dozen of these curses that could make someone immortal and invincible. Come in, there's a real welcoming party waiting for you inside. By the way, let me tell you the whole process of solving the evil spirit. Cordelia said at this time. Rob and Madison nodded, and after walking into the house with everyone else, they narrated their thrilling experiences of fighting against evil spirits in a very emotional and exaggerated manner. Thousands of miles away. Just as Rob was boasting about his great achievements to a group of witches and house girls. Green Township, Alpena County. Although Heather had been taken in, there were no more roars or footsteps at night. But 3 days is too short after all. Even though they had doubts in their hearts, the people who remained in Greentown still maintained the necessary fear and vigilance. The town was as deserted as ever. In this environment, 3 black SUVs drove in and headed straight for the cemetery where Heather was buried. The car door opened. Led by 2 men in black suits, a team of 10 people dressed in black combat uniforms, armed to the teeth but without any insignia of their department, got off the car and took out some high-tech equipment that obviously looked sophisticated. 5 minutes later, the armed personnel who was operating the instrument screen said, no spirit entity was found. The leading man in a suit uttered a light hum and then looked at his companion beside him. The latter understood and quickly opened the heavily insured silver briefcase he was carrying, took out the only ancient compass inside, injected a 100 ml bottle of blood into it, and said, "Where's Heather Neymark?" In an instant, the needle on the compass began to spin rapidly. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Seeing the terrifying scream coming from the still spinning compass, he no longer hesitated and quickly put it back into the suitcase and closed the case tightly. After the scream stopped, he breathed a sigh of relief and said, "It seems that Heather Neymark is still here, but she has left." The leader in suits nodded. Generally, evil spirits will not leave the range in front of it. Obviously, someone took it away. Do you need to find that person? No need. No matter what his purpose is, he will eventually use it, or be used by it. This also saves us trouble. But. No buts. Are you one of those saints from the Savior party? No. That's not very good. Let's let it play outside more so we don't get our hands dirty. Chapter 28 Identity Upgrade. Witch Academy. Rob's vivid description of the battle against evil spirits not only opened the eyes of the witches including Cordelia, but also made the new maid Delphi busy delivering tea and snacks back and forth. Seeing that the welcome party was over, Delphi, who was over 200 years old, was about to breathe a sigh of relief and give her old bones a good rest. Queenie called out to her again, "I'm not full yet, give me some more peach pie." Delphi clenched her hands and said unhappily, "Still eating? You won't be able to find a man like this. If you were my daughter, I would definitely lock that ice box and throw away the key." Having said that, she still walked towards the ice box, or refrigerator, to get the ingredients. After her racist remarks angered everyone when she first arrived, Fiona deliberately gave her to Queenie as a slave. She suffered a lot during these few days of getting along. Otherwise, she should have responded by now, "How dare you open your filthy mouth at me, you lowlife NR," instead of just being unhappy. Rob paid no attention to these little incidents. With some spare money, he gave the witches the small gifts he had bought on the road. Finally, he came to Nan and handed her the new headphones he had specially prepared for her. He winked and said, "Keep it a secret, Nan." Nan took the new headphones and nodded happily, "Okay." Although she couldn't read Rob's mind, Madison could. She naturally knew what the real experience was, so she was trying to hold back her laughter. She had been thinking about whether or not to tell the truth, but now that she had been bribed by Rob, she immediately gave up the idea. Nan, who has been regarded as a freak by others since childhood, has never received any gifts except from his relatives. Rob certainly made up for her. With her favorable impression of the other party greatly increased, she naturally listened to what the other party said. The welcoming ceremony is over. Rob returned to his room and was packing up the luggage he brought back when there was a knock on the door. It was his cheap girlfriend. At this time, Zoe was already wearing the gift that she had given herself, a beautiful blue dress. "Does it look good?" she asked as she turned around, her skirt fluttering, revealing her straight and slender calves. "Of course." Rob nodded. Hearing this, Zoe's smile widened. No longer suppressing her fiery emotions, she threw herself into Rob's arms, brought the two of them into the room, raised her legs, closed the door heavily, and spent time together as a couple. With no one watching, Rob also relaxed and began to enjoy the youthful feeling of having someone else, the old driver Madison. Unfortunately, in the end, the gun could only be touched but not fired accidentally. "It would have been nice if it was me who went with you instead of Madison." After they separated, Zoe said regretfully, panting. It was already a bad feeling for her to have to sit at home while her boyfriend was in danger, and the person who went with her was Madison, who obviously had feelings for her boyfriend, which made her feel even more threatened. If she wasn't afraid of disturbing him, she would have wanted to talk to Rob on the phone every moment. "It can't be helped. Madison is also cursed," Rob explained. "Besides, you have only been here for a few days and haven't learned much about witches. I don't feel safe if you really want to go with me." Zoe looked a little gloomy. Compared to Madison, Queenie, and Nan, her abilities really don't have much effect. "Next, I will study hard," she said solemnly. "This is not only about strength, but also about the happiness of both people." If it weren't for her health problems, she wouldn't have been so unconfident when facing Rob and even Madison. Do you really think she didn't notice Madison's little actions behind the scenes? Rob didn't know what Zoe was going through, he just used chicken soup from China to cheer her up. Soon, seeing Zoe, who was so excited that she wanted to study late into the night, go back to study, he sighed slightly. Although he inherited the memories of his predecessor, he is obviously not that sincere in terms of emotions. To be honest, she is not as real as Madison, who has been with me through thick and thin these days. As for why not leaving Zoe? Of course it's because of my identity. Well, to put it bluntly, it's all selfishness. He originally felt a little guilty. But when comparing himself with the American teenagers who spent more time having fun, Rob felt a lot more at ease because he thought he was still a good young man. As the future father and savior of the American people, is it normal to be loved by so many women? Of course it's normal. Now, let's adapt and take precautions for a bright future. It's impossible for a lifetime of fame to be ruined by continuous romantic scandals. Thinking this in his heart, Rob nodded heavily. Then, he received a temptation. Looking at the bathroom selfie sent by Madison on the phone, Rob kept it silently and then told Madison righteously that it was wrong to do so. Was she trying to create a scandal like her Hollywood predecessors? Madison expressed regret and deleted the picture immediately. Just as Rob was sighing that this young boy is teachable, a new message came. "Open the door." Is this a door-opening thing? It really destroys my spiritual resolve all the time. In order to resist temptation and improve your self-level. Rob touched his waist and refused righteously. In the end, he enjoyed a quiet and peaceful night as he wished. The next day, Rob, who had no awareness of being a butler, woke up almost at the same time as the witches, and went downstairs together to enjoy the breakfast prepared by Spaulding and Delphi. Spaulding was not as repulsive to Delphi as he was to Rob, and he obviously knew that the other party was not the same kind of person as him. At the dinner table, Cordelia had no problem with Rob's late rising. After hearing yesterday's story, Zoe no longer regarded this unique boyfriend as a servant. He was able to fight against evil spirits without any retreat and played an important role in it. Such abundant military force. Compared to a male servant, she would rather train Rob to be a protector of witches. Faced with possible dangers in reality, young witches would undoubtedly feel much more at ease if they had someone like this to protect them. "Rob, come to my office after breakfast and talk," Cordelia said after making a decision. Rob nodded. Although he didn't know if he was willing, he thought it was not a bad thing. Really? Half an hour later, when Rob came out of Cordelia's office, his face was full of radiance. He has already got a new contract. Not a valet, but the head of security at Robichaux Academy for Distinguished Ladies. Just like the suit-clad bodyguards around Myrtle. Although he is the head of security, he is the only one he manages right now. But improved status and salary increases are always good things. Just like now, when passing by Spaulding, Rob greeted him with a half-master attitude. "Hey, Spaulding, keep working hard and remember to close the doors and windows at night." After saying this, he left with a smile, ignoring the other person's long face. Chapter 29 Neighbors. For the next few days, everything was calm. The young witches are taught by Cordelia and the elusive Fiona to control their abilities more effectively. Rob, who is no longer busy with housework, can exercise or play with Zoe and Madison. Of course, he did not forget to search for more supernatural events on the internet. However, after completing Heather's shelter target and inadvertently taking in Madison, the 20-day buffer time made him less anxious than before. Unfortunately, no shelter points can be obtained under special containment, which makes Rob's plan to increase points impossible to carry out. It would be great if there was a reliable channel for supernatural news. Rob looked at various supernatural forums on the internet. There were all kinds of supernatural rumors in them, but with his own experience, he knew how deceptive the truth was. After all, if a supernatural event really happens, how many people can escape? Dead people don't post. Just as Rob was thinking about other ways to contact the supernatural, there was a sudden noise outside the house. As the new security director, he had the responsibility to protect the safety of the academy, so he immediately stood up and walked towards the balcony. Coming to the balcony, Rob looked down and saw a truck loaded with household goods parked in front of the gate of a residential building that had been empty to the left of the college. Obviously, there was a new owner there. Looking at this scene, Rob felt vaguely familiar. It had been so long that he couldn't remember most of the details. But it doesn't matter. With my own participation, and the fact that there are many stories other than American horror in this world, everything has changed beyond recognition. Rob, who no longer cared about it, was about to go back when he saw Zoe, Madison, Queenie, and Nan walking over. "Did something happen outside?" Zoe asked. Rob pointed casually and said, "We have new neighbors." "Yeah." The young witches became interested and walked to the railing to look down. They saw the neighbor's mistress's son, a young man, carrying goods with his upper body naked and a good figure. "He's so handsome," Nan said with shining eyes. "Delicious as cream," Queenie added figuratively. Zoe looked at the two girls and suggested with a smile, "Do you like that boy? You can go after him." Queenie was about to nod. Puff. Madison laughed out loud. Queenie immediately said angrily, "BCH, don't you think I don't know what you are thinking?" Hearing this, Madison spread his hands and said, What did I say? Seeing that this pair of people who disliked each other were about to confront each other again, Rob hurriedly stepped forward to stop them, thus preventing the situation from escalating. Queenie was in no mood to watch any further, so she went downstairs with a thump, apparently trying to turn her anger into appetite. Madison shrugged, gave Rob an innocent look, and left in boredom. In the past, she might have flirted with the handsome young neighbor. But now that there are people with better figures and better looks, naturally, I am not interested in losing sight of the main goal. Zoe glanced helplessly at her roommate's back, shook her head and said, "Don't be influenced by them." "Nan, do you want to meet the new neighbors?" "Of course." Nan said excitedly, "He's very nice. I like me very much, and he will like me too." "Really?" Zoe, who knew Nan's ability, looked at the boy below with some surprise, "Then go visit him as a neighbor." "Okay. Let me prepare the gift first." After saying that, Nan happily went downstairs to prepare. Zoe looked at Rob, "Want to join us?" "Forget it, go by yourselves." Rob showed no interest. Soon, Nan went to visit her neighbor with the cake she baked. Zoe, who was worried about Nan being alone, followed him. Rob and Madison, who stayed behind, were watching TV on the sofa in the living room. The screen was showing President Obama's speech. Delphi, who was preparing food for Queenie, passed by and accidentally saw this scene. She said with despair on her face, "Oh God! Have you abandoned this country that you were once proud of?" "What did you say?" Madison, who didn't know much about Delphi, asked in confusion. Rob explained, "It's just a normal reaction for an old antique who is out of touch with the times to have his worldview collapse after seeing a completely different new society." Then, he looked at Delphi and kindly reminded her, "Believe me, what you see now is only a small part of the changes in the new era. You need a stronger heart." Delphi left in a daze, and it was unknown whether she heard what Rob said. Madison stopped paying attention to Delphi. After reading some current affairs news and Hollywood gossip, she complained to Rob, "Student life is so boring day after day. There haven't been any activities or parties recently. Rob, why don't we find some time to go camping in the nearby swamp park? I miss those cute crocodiles." The two of them had just visited the attractions in downtown New Orleans not long ago, so Madison didn't mention them. "No problem. And bring Zoe, Queenie, and Nan along as well," Rob agreed. The 3-day road trip to witness all kinds of scenery made him feel a lot more wild. He was not as homebound as before, but instead became more like American youth. In addition, the endless swamp is inherently mysterious and has always been the source of urban legends and horror stories. "It would be even better if I could complete one of the shelter targets at will." "Zoe." Madison frowned. She had originally wanted to go over and talk to the two of them, but Rob showed up with a group of people. After thinking about it, she nodded in agreement. An hour later, Nan and Zoe returned safely. Without Madison, a woman who was obviously a vixen in the eyes of the parents, Nan and Zoe successfully completed the visit. Although the boy's stern and religious mother still left a deep impression on them. After hearing Rob's plan for camping, Zoe naturally wouldn't refuse. Nan, on the other hand, thought about it and shook his head, then said cheerfully, "I won't go. In the next period of time, I have to strike while the iron is hot with Luke to improve my relationship." Luke was the name of the neighbor boy. Hearing this, Madison was surprised and asked, "Improve the relationship? That guy named Luke accepted you?" "Of course." Nan said proudly, "He likes people like me. He has no interest in bold and hot girls like you." "Then he's not a man." Madison rolled her eyes speechlessly, then gave Rob a proud look. Rob didn't answer. In this way, including Queenie who had already agreed to come, there will be a total of 4 people participating in the camping. Without any delay, the date was set for tomorrow. Chapter 30, Minotaur. Rob drove to the city center to purchase camping necessities. Inside the academy, Nan sat alone in a corner, wearing headphones and looking at a teaching book on love skills with a silly smile on his face. Zoe, Madison, and Queenie were excitedly talking about how they were going to have fun tomorrow. Fiona suddenly appeared in front of them. "What are you talking about?" she asked with a smile after scanning the young faces of the witches. "We're talking about camping. Tomorrow will be a good day," Queenie replied nonchalantly. Fiona said with emotion, "It's a good choice. I remember that when I was young, I participated in various camping activities for a long time. Forests, mountains, islands, deserts, uninhabited areas, the beauty of nature is innumerable. Youth is really wonderful. Enjoy your youth and don't regret it when you are old." "Oh, yes." Just as she was about to turn around, Fiona paused, turned back, waved to Madison and said, "I didn't attend the welcoming party. Madison, come here and tell me how you and Rob solved the evil spirit. I am very interested in this matter." Madison's heart tightened. With the information Rob had told her about the Supreme Witch before, she now had a different understanding of Fiona's words and actions. Fortunately, she is an actress, so her acting skills are impeccable. "No problem." Madison gave Fiona her most standard smile, and at her wave, she stood up and left with her. Zoe and Queenie didn't care and continued with the previous topic. 3 hours later, Rob, who came back with a lot of bags, heard from Zoe that Fiona had called Madison away. His face suddenly tightened and he asked quickly, "Where did they go?" "I don't know." Zoe said with some envy, "Fiona seems to like Madison very much. Indeed, Madison's power is growing the fastest among us. Maybe Fiona thinks she is the next Supreme Witch. That's what makes it more dangerous." Rob frowned and took out his phone, about to send a message to Madison. Zoe, noticing Rob's expression, asked in confusion, "What's wrong? Is there something wrong?" "Nothing." Rob shook his head. "Just asking Madison if she needs anything else for the camping trip tomorrow." Rob sent a message, and although the content was not stated explicitly, Madison could understand it. Soon, Madison's reply came. "Everything is fine, nothing else is needed." "Don't you need it?" Rob breathed a sigh of relief. Since Madison said so, she must have a foolproof plan. Rob was relieved. Of course, to avoid any surprises, he would still send Madison a message every once in a while to make sure she was safe. And so it went on until late at night. The two witches, one big and one small, stayed in the bar for a long time and finally decided to go home. In order to avoid unnecessary accidents, Rob chose to wait. Feeling a little hungry, he went to the kitchen to find something to eat and found Queenie eating heartily there, while Delphi was kneading the dough with a helpless look on her face, supplying fresh food at any time. "Are you still asleep?" Rob greeted Queenie. "I'm a little hungry," Queenie said confidently. After that, she held out an untouched plate of pastries and shared, "Want some? It's still hot." "Certainly." Rob took the plate without hesitation and commented as he ate, "Too much sugar. It's too sweet." "Really? Why do I feel like it's okay?" Looking at the identical pastry in her hand, Queenie swallowed it in one gulp, and said in confusion after tasting it. Even so, she still called to Delphi, "Another plate, remember to put less sugar." Delphi, who was already impatient, kneaded the dough fiercely and complained even more, "Oh my God! What did I do wrong? Not only did I get one bottomless pit, but now there's another one. It's time to sleep, not eat. As a maid, you should obey your master's orders. At least Queenie didn't whip you, right?" Rob, who was glad that he had only been a butler for a day or two, teased Delphi. He had no good feelings towards this old woman who took pride in torture and killing and even imprisoned and abused her own daughter. No matter how you correct it, a pervert is still a pervert. Indeed, thanks for the reminder, Rob. Queenie continued, hurry up and do it. Don't be lazy. I'll beat you up, you damn white supremacist. One is black, the other is yellow. Delphi muttered softly. When he was about to say something, his peripheral vision suddenly caught a glimpse of a dark shadow flashing past the window. What just happened? She was startled. Queenie, what? Stop making excuses to be lazy. There's something outside the window. Really? Delphi moved carefully to the window and looked out. Queenie turned her head and looked out the window, and said impatiently, there's nothing outside. Come back to work before I whip you, slave. What's wrong? Their conversation caught the attention of Rob, who was filling his stomach. As soon as he turned his head to look, Delphi suddenly let out a scream of terror and stepped back repeatedly. No. Impossible. This can't be true. Delphi, trembling all over, said this fearfully while quickly locking the doors and windows. What on earth are you doing? Queenie stood up in confusion and was about to hold the nervous Delphi, but Rob said seriously. There is something out there. Queenie. You two should close the doors and windows, and don't go out. I'm going to get the gun upstairs to get them. Wait for me. Time was running out, so after saying all this quickly, Rob ran upstairs quickly. Just when Delphi was frightened and stepped back, he did see a minotaur appear outside the window. Clearly this is not a normal guy. Rob ran back to his room as fast as he could, took out his pistol, and shouted the names of Cordelia, Zoe, and Nan. In order to avoid any danger below, he ran down again without waiting for the other party to respond. At this time, Delphi downstairs had tremblingly revealed her true identity, and the Minotaur was her former servant Bastion, also the former lover of the Voodoo Queen. She had installed the bull's head herself. Queenie glanced at Delphi speechlessly. She wanted to go out and meet the poor fellow in person, but when she thought of what Rob said, she did not go out. She picked up the sharp knife and fork, and looked around with a defensive look on her face. How's it going? In just over 10 seconds, even the witches upstairs had just been awakened when Rob ran back and was asking about the current situation. The loud slamming of the door told him everything. Chapter 31 New Confinement. He's coming. He's coming. Delphi screamed in terror. Shut up. Queenie yelled impatiently, go hide somewhere else first. No. Just leave her here. Like she just said, the monster is coming for her. With the bait, it will be easier to hunt the prey. Rob pulled back Delphi, who was trying to escape, and said coldly. He didn't want to play hide and seek with a monster in the dark night, especially with unarmed girls like Nan and Zoe at home. Anyway, Delphi can't be killed no matter what, so it's perfect to use her as bait and meat shield. No. No. Let me hide. That beast Bastion will tear me apart. Delphi tried desperately to struggle. Although she lived a long time, she only had the strength of an ordinary woman and could not break free from Rob's hand. Queenie saw it all, and although she usually cursed at him constantly, she still said kindly, let Delphi. Before she could finish her words, she stopped. Just at this moment, the violent sound of BG on the door suddenly stopped, and the entire first floor became eerily quiet. He's coming. He's coming. Delphi, who was used as a human shield by Rob, trembled. Behind Delphi, Rob, with the safety of his Glock on, was ready to shoot. There he is. A voice suddenly came from upstairs. It was Nan, who was closest to her. She pointed at a window with a look of horror on her face. Rob, who was well aware of Nan's abilities, pointed his gun in the direction Nan pointed without saying a word. Really? The next second, the sound of glass shattering was heard. Bastian, a minotaur with dark skin and extremely strong body, broke through the window and rushed towards his former mistress, Delphi, with murderous intent, breathing heavily like a bull. Bang! Flames came out of the muzzle. Rob shot without saying anything. The 9mm bullet hit the Minotaur's heart with great accuracy. However, this only made the opponent stagger a little, and after some smelly black blood flowed from the place where he was shot, he rushed forward again with a roar. I hate monsters that can't be killed by being shot. While thinking about whether to buy a heavy machine gun to keep at home, Rob, who could tear the opponent's body apart even if he couldn't kill him, kept firing the Glock in his hand. Roaring, gunshots, screaming. This made the remaining witches upstairs, who were still confused, speed up their actions. Shit! A voodoo-stitched monster. Cordelia ran out in her pajamas, pulling Nen behind her, and recognized the Minotaur's identity at a glance. Rob, help me stall for time. As Cordelia spoke, she quickly found a piece of chalk and began to draw a ritual circle on the ground. Of course. Looking back at Cordelia, who was acting reliably, Rob continued to shoot calmly. The Minotaur didn't stand there to get hit. Its speed was much faster than that of a normal person, and many of its bullets missed the target. Seeing that the bullets in the pistol magazine were used up and the Minotaur was getting closer and closer, Rob did not hesitate and pushed the Delphi in his hand over very cunningly. Bastian, who only had eyes for his old master, ignored Rob. He grabbed the terrified Delphi. Because of the old grudge and the entrustment from the Voodoo Queen Mary, he was about to torture the woman in his hand and take her back to let her continue to suffer the dark days in the coffin. Queenie then took action. She stabbed the knife into her arm. He was fine, but the Minotaur had a penetrating wound on his arm, and his hand collapsed when he was about to stretch it out. This is just the beginning. Queenie took the knife and slashed her neck again. In an instant, the Minotaur's throat was cut and black blood gushed out. Well done, Queenie. Rob, who had just slipped away, rushed back again. While the Minotaur was covering his neck, he grabbed the other's horns with one hand and kicked the other's knee with one foot. With their combined strength, they tripped the other to the ground. Boom! The floor on the first floor suddenly shook. The Minotaur struggled to get up. Rob pressed on him tightly, shooting the Minotaur in the head with a knock with a new magazine, and shouted to the frightened Delphi, "If you don't want to encounter what happened just now again, come and help." Hearing this, Delphi didn't care that Rob had used her as a meat shield just now. She gritted her teeth and rushed over quickly. With a push of her 300-pound body, the Minotaur, who had just held up a lot, fell back again. At the same time, Cordelia, who had already prepared the ritual, also chanted the spell. Mysterious and powerful notes continued to sound in the room. Rob and the others didn't feel anything. The Minotaur, on the other hand, seemed to have suffered a severe blow and let out a painful beast cry. He wanted to escape from here, but was held down by Rob and Delphi. With the help of Queenie. Finally, after a sharp scream like that of a vengeful spirit, the Minotaur became silent. He's dead. Queenie, who had stabbed herself so many times but not a drop of blood came out, asked. Certainly. Rob nodded as he felt the book of containment being updated with a new page. Cordelia also confirmed at this time, his twisted and evil soul no longer exists. That's good. Queenie breathed a sigh of relief, threw away the knife in her hand, and sat down tiredly. Although she was not injured at all, it took a lot of mana to use the voodoo doll's abilities. Rob glanced at Queenie enviously. I have to say that the opponent's humanoid voodoo doll's abilities are really amazing, especially when it comes to humans. Every strike is so accurate. It would be great if I could acquire this ability. Thinking of Madison in special containment, Rob looked at Queenie, and then he shuddered violently. No, I really can't eat it. Rob quickly stopped this dangerous thought. He stood up from the Minotaur's corpse and was about to say something to Cordelia when a high-frequency sharp vibration of buzz 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 suddenly sounded in the house. This is... Rob turned his head and saw Zoe taking out an electric saw from somewhere and running towards him aggressively. The previous noise also alarmed her. But she didn't scream like a normal girl. Knowing that she would only be a drag if she went up with her own abilities, she did not just sit there, but ran to the utility room, found the chainsaw she had seen before, and prepared to make a cameo appearance as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. "That's a good idea, Zoe." Rob gave Zoe a thumbs up. When it comes to dealing with the Minotaur, the chainsaw in Zoe's hand, which is powerful enough to chop a person in half, is indeed more effective than his pistol. "It's over," Zoe said blankly as she looked at the silence at the scene. "You're late." Queenie waved at her. "All right." Unable to tell whether she felt relief or regret, Zoe finally put down the chainsaw. Chapter 32 7 Formations. When Fiona and Madison returned to their residence in high heels and reeking of alcohol, they saw a strange scene consisting of broken glass, overturned furniture, minotaurs, chainsaws, black blood, ritual formations, etc. Am I dazzled? Or have I come to the wrong place? Madison rubbed his eyes, unable to believe what he saw. It looks like it's where we live. Fiona glanced at Cordelia's acquaintances, rubbed her forehead, and quickly sobered up and said, "Who can tell me what happened while I was away?" Fiona looked at Rob. Obviously he was impressed by this guy's ability to stir up trouble. Rob spread his hands helplessly, indicating that it was really not his fault. "No need to look for anyone else, this is the trouble you caused." Cordelia stood up and said to her mother. "Yes, that's you." Cordelia pointed at the Minotaur. "This is the work of voodoo. You went to her and deliberately caused trouble. This is her revenge." Fiona narrowed her eyes and waved her hand. Snap! The Minotaur's neck was twisted like a knot, and then with a pull, his skin, flesh, trachea, and bones were broken. Black blood gushed out like a fountain, and the Minotaur's head flew towards Fiona's palm. Looking at this scene, Queenie silently put down the snacks in her hand. After catching the bull's head, Fiona carefully examined it without caring about the dirt on it. She sneered and said, "It is indeed the work of that BCH. She actually sent this thing to attack the witch school. This is a provocation. It is a violation of the peace treaty. If you want to talk about provocation, it should be you who went to her and started the fire first." Cordelia, who had never suffered such an attack in the academy for decades, said in a bad mood. "You know that very well. You went to her place, and why? This is my private matter, you don't need to know." Fiona sneered, "Don't need to know? Let me guess, you went there to find those voodoo practitioners to cast a fertility spell for you. Mary's conception spell, haha. Do you do this because you think the voodoo people have higher magic power?" Cordelia responded sharply, "Perhaps I can verify it after my own experience. But thanks to you, she rejected my request. So it's all my fault?" "Certainly. I went there to demonstrate to my enemies. And your actions are to bring shame to the witches of Salem." "Demonstration? Then what about the famous Madame Delphi Lalaurie?" Cordelia pointed at Delphi. Prior to this, she had learned Delphi's true identity from Queenie. Fiona was silent. She glanced at the young witches around her, took a deep breath, and said to Cordelia, "The quarrel between mother and daughter should be settled in private. Spalding, clean up here." After saying that, she still held the bull's head in her hand, waved to Delphi, and took her to Cordelia's office. A family ethics drama between mother and daughter has come to a temporary end. Rob looked at their backs, with a look of lingering regret in his eyes. Compared to the young witches who only had a vague understanding of the whole matter, he knew the whole story clearly. To put it bluntly, After discovering Delphi's immortality, the yearning Fiona ran to the voodoo queen Mary, hoping to become immortal like Delphi. Unfortunately, they had a disagreement and a conflict arose between them. Mary learned from the incident that the Delphi she had buried underground had been dug out, and coupled with Fiona's provocation, she thought of what happened today. Not only warned the witches, but also brought Delphi back. It's a pity that the Minotaur was defeated. Even the soul was swallowed up by the Book of Shelter. Rob knew that there would be a lot of trouble between the two witch groups in the future, looking at the young witches and asked, "So, will the camping activity continue tomorrow?" "Of course continue. Isn't everything resolved?" Madison, who had sobered up a lot from his drunken state, said in a matter-of-fact tone. Rob looked at Queenie. The latter stretched out his fat black hand towards the snacks but stopped. He nodded solemnly after hearing this. "I need a change of environment to improve my appetite. Rob, remember to leave more space in the trunk for snacks. As for Zoe, well, it's so easy to guess that the other person has an expression that says 'I'll go if you go.' Sure enough, no matter what kind of disaster it is, it cannot stop young Americans from going out and having fun." Rob nodded and followed the local customs. Then, the plan remains the same. After midnight. After tossing and turning for a long time, everyone, including Fiona and her daughter, were very tired and fell asleep one after another. Rob was about to take a rest, but a text message interrupted his thoughts. Soon, there was a slight knock on the door. Rob opened the door and Madison, wearing a sexy suspender nightgown, walked in quickly. "Didn't Zoe find out?" Rob asked worriedly. Madison smiled and said, "Don't worry, I used my new ability to make her sleep peacefully without her noticing." "A new ability?" "Yeah. Fiona taught me that. Do you want to try it?" Madison showed a fox-like smile on her face. Without waiting for Rob's response, she pulled up her already short skirt and ordered in a commanding tone. "Help me." "What?" Before Rob could react, he suddenly became dazed, his body involuntarily dropped, and his head leaned forward. When he was about to touch the destination, he was shocked all over. Rob broke free from the control and regained his clarity of mind. He quickly stood up and glared at Madison angrily. "This is not a funny joke." Madison smiled and blinked. "It's not like this hasn't happened before." "Can it be the same? One is active, the other is forced. Completely different meaning." Rob sternly warned that such behavior must not be repeated. After Madison assured him again and again, he revealed it and said, "That was the new ability you awakened." Rob knew what this was. Mind control, one of the 7 formation abilities, can temporarily control a person's thoughts. Of course, if one possesses magical powers as powerful as Fiona's, combined with certain means, it is also possible to permanently change a person's cognition. This is undoubtedly a very powerful ability. Combined with mind control, fire control, shape-shifting, out-of-body experience, divination, and resurrection, these form the 7 most important formations of the Salem witches. The standard for becoming a supreme witch is to pass the test of 7 formations and master all 7 abilities. Madison now has 3. Then think about the future where she has mastered the other 6 abilities except divination. No wonder Fiona identified her as the next supreme witch. The qualifications are really outstanding. Well, I have a good vision too. Such soft wool can be stroked for a long time. Chapter 33 Madison, wait a minute, let me add a point. I learned it after Fiona taught me once. What do you think? Am I awesome? Madison said proudly. Indeed it is amazing. Rob nodded first, then frowned and said, so your talent has been exposed to Fiona. It's nothing. Madison waved her hand. Then, she suddenly smiled as if she remembered something and said, You don't know how complicated Fiona's expression was when she saw me successfully perform mind control in one try. Of course, with your reminder, I specifically mentioned that I had a heart murmur afterwards. I didn't expect that this disease that has troubled me since childhood would become my life-saving straw. But it's also a good thing to be able to receive private instruction from the Supreme Witch for free. Madison finally comforted herself. That's good. After hearing this, Rob breathed a sigh of relief. Fiona was naturally aware of the selection criteria for the Supreme Witch, and she probably wouldn't pay attention to Madison anymore. As for young witches like Zoe, Queenie, and Nan, they will probably attract more attention from Fiona. Troubles really come one after another. Rob sighed. Just then, a fascinating aroma wafted into my nose. Madison, dressed in sexy and cool clothes, came close to him, her eyes full of love, and said, "Rob, you must have been waiting anxiously for my news today. I'm very happy. This is the first time someone cares about me so much. My terrible parents never did that. They just kept taking money from me. Next, let me repay you. Just relax and enjoy yourself." Rob originally wanted to say that it was too late and everyone was too tired, so they should go and have a rest, but he didn't expect Madison to have already taken action. He took a breath and had to stop speaking. It has happened, so let it be. I don't know if my body can handle it. I'm still too tired tonight and not in good shape. How about adding some more? Anyway, after taking in the Minotaurs, new shelter points will be added to the account. No. The shelter points are hard to come by, and they must be well planned so that every point is fully utilized. We can no longer add as casually as before. But Madison didn't know if she drank fake wine tonight. Rob had no choice but to resort to this desperate measure. Physique, 1.4. Physique, 1.5. No, 003. Name, Bastian. Type, bull-headed stitched monster. Status, contained. Abilities, strong, suture. Introduction, a poor male servant was seduced by his master's daughter, and was discovered by his master. He was abused and even had a bull's head sewn on. Although his lover, the voodoo queen, punished his master named Delphi Lala Yuri, she could not save his life. In the end, she could only use voodoo to refine him into a stitched monster that was neither human nor ghost, and stayed with her forever. The voodoo queen has really strong taste. The next morning, after fighting most of the night, Rob had no energy to do anything else. He woke up and opened the updated book of confinement and commented. Although the rest time was short, his 1.5 physique allowed him to recover quickly. After quickly reading the information about the new guest in the Book of Inclusion, Rob, refreshed, turned the page to his own. In the shelter point row, it has changed from the initial 0 to 50. Plus the 10 points consumed in physical exertion last night. Minotaur Bastion brought him a total of 60 shelter points. It is much less than the 100 points of Heather with the golden arm before. Rob shifted his gaze from the 50 shelter points that had not yet been assigned and looked at the ability column. Among them, in addition to mind control, the new ones that can be awakened by oneself include strength and mind control. Strong is one of Bastion's abilities. When awakened, it has a passive attribute that can increase physical strength by 0.5. It seems good, but you should know that awakening your second ability now costs 80 containment points. Rob discovered that the containment points spent on awakening his abilities were not based on the strength of his abilities, but on the number of abilities. It costs 50 points to awaken the first ability, 80 points for the second, and even more for the third and fourth. This makes me more cautious in choosing abilities in the future. An ability like Strength, which only requires 50 points to increase physical strength by 0.5, but requires 80 points to achieve the same effect, is naturally useless to Rob. Bastion has another ability, Suture. No matter how serious the injury is, you can recover quickly after simple or even rough sutures. Just like Heather's evil spirit ability, this ability only works on stitches. Rob can't learn. Madison gave him surprises time and time again. After last night's physical and mental interaction, Madison's newly awakened mind control also came to his own awakening menu. In addition to mind control, fire control and various other abilities that will be mastered in the future. It can be said that Madison supported herself on her own. Not only does it guarantee quantity, but the quality is also much higher than strong and the like. Stretch such high quality wool was definitely the best thing Rob had ever done. He glanced at the sunken bed surface which was still warm, and thought that he would need to reward the other person with his body and mind. Putting away the book of shelter, Rob was not in a hurry to add points. As the more abilities he has, the more points he has to spend, so he has to think carefully about what to choose next. In addition, sometimes more abilities are not necessarily better, especially when one's own spirituality is low. Just like control fire, although he can now summon a ball of fire, it is far from covering the entire body of the female corpse like Fiona did, and the flame only exists for a very short time. The two basic attributes of spirituality and physical strength must not be ignored. You should think about how to distribute it specifically first. Well, situations like what happened yesterday cannot happen again. Of course, if you encounter an emergency, allocating points based on actual conditions is also a good choice. Dear Rob, it's time to go. I can't wait to see the alligators. Delphi. Is my snack ready? At this time, the girls' joyful voices were heard outside the door. Rob, remembering that he still had activities today, replied. Immediately. Having said that, he set off quickly. A quarter of an hour later, Rob, with all his belongings ready, drove his Chevrolet and took the girls to the nearby swamp for vacation. At the second floor window, after watching the car go away, Fiona looked back at the bullhead on the table and said with a smile, "It's time to return the favor to an old friend." Chapter 34, Departure to the Swamp. As one of the famous attractions in New Orleans, swamp wetlands are mostly distributed around it. Visitors can follow tour companies, take special boats, explore the swamp, and come into contact with a variety of natural scenery and wild animals such as crocodiles, seabirds, water snakes, turtles, eagles, etc. Of course, you can also travel by car. Rob and his group, who did not want to be with so many people, chose the latter option. It's just that they seem to overestimate their abilities. Does anyone know where we are now? Rob, who was driving, looked at the dense forests on both sides of the road and asked his companion. That's not something a driver should say, Madison sneered. She turned on her phone and looked at the screen, which showed no signal at all. She curled her lips and said, "No signal. By the way, Rob, where did you take us to? No Man's Land? Aren't we going to Lafitte National Park?" Queenie, who was eating snacks, said belatedly. Rob explained, "I saw a side road on the navigation that could get me to my destination faster, so I drove in here. It turns out that sometimes you really can't trust the navigation. Now it has lost itself. Let me look at the map." Seeing this, Zoe took out the prepared paper map and started searching on it. Rob also stopped the car at this time, and put his head in front of the map, noting his previous driving actions on it. Soon, Zoe said in confusion, "This road now doesn't seem to be marked on the map." "That's normal." Queenie said without surprise, "New maps are like this. Many remote roads are not drawn. If it were an old map from decades ago, it would definitely be more detailed. No one in my hometown has ever been stupid enough to buy a new map. I've learned that. There are many powder trading locations hidden in the old maps." Madison nodded thoughtfully. Queenie understood Madison's meaning in an instant and her face darkened, even though she was already very dark. Shit. Can't you just stay quiet for half an hour? Madison curled her lips and smiled brightly. I have always been very quiet. I just received your revelation and was inspired to speak. Seeing this scene, Zoe, who was sitting in the front seat, slapped her forehead helplessly, stuffed the map into Rob's hand, got out of the car directly, came to Madison's side, opened the door and said, "Let's change positions." She didn't want to endure the confrontation between the two of them all the way. No problem. Madison immediately made an okay gesture, stepped out with her two straight white legs under her denim shorts, and sat in Zoe's original seat in a few moments. Looking at Rob beside her, she blinked, took the map and casually shoved it in her hand, saying, "Keep driving, Rob. There's no weeds growing on this road yet, so there must be cars passing by frequently. You'll definitely meet people if you keep going. You finally made a good suggestion." Rob nodded to Madison, then looked to the back seat, and when he saw Zoe was already seated, he continued driving forward. A quarter of an hour later, a rusty road sign came into view. Fort Collins. What place is this? Does anyone know where this is? Looking at the words on the road sign, Rob asked everyone. Needless to say, Zoe had only been here for a few days like herself, so she naturally didn't know the whole story. Queenie shook his head, indicating that he should not be asked such geographical questions. Madison did say, "I do know someone named Collins. Susan Collins, the author of The Hunger Games. I even participated in the selection of the female lead for the movie adapted from her novel. Maybe she has something to do with this place." At the end, Madison smiled playfully. It's useless to say anything. As expected, Rob rolled his eyes, thinking that he could not be relied upon, stepped on the accelerator and accelerated forward. No matter what Fort Collins looks like, if the road sign is here, it won't be long before there are signs of human activity. Zoe was actually very interested in what Madison had just said. Just like any other girl, she was very curious about Hollywood and asked, "A movie actress audition? What is that like?" Madison shrugged. "What else can I do? Put on some nice clothes and show off in front of a bunch of old men, calling it a test of my acting skills." Zoe asked innocently, "Isn't acting important?" Madison laughed, "Honey, if you go to any training class in Los Angeles, you'll find a lot of people whose acting skills are as good as those of Oscar winners. Casting based on acting skills is the biggest joke in Hollywood. So that's why your acting is so bad." Queenie interrupted suddenly. Madison turned around, deliberately looked at Queenie, and said with a perfect smile, "In Hollywood, a pretty face is indeed more important than acting skills. But you were still not selected, and now you are out of date." Queenie said the truth. Madison, who was already used to the outdated words, simply spread his hands and said, "I can't help it. Who made me not want to serve those old guys? My agent is even more anxious than me. He keeps giving me homework all day long. He's eager to join me in a mixed fight against the old guys." As an experienced driver, Madison is not shy about matters between men and women, but this must be done on the premise that she is happy both physically and mentally. "So, the death of your agent?" Zoe said with a look of disillusionment. Madison gave her a look of her own understanding. "Okay, ladies, we can stop talking about Hollywood now. Let's go to the gas station." Rob interrupted the girls' conversation at this point. After parking the car in the open space next to the gas station, the four of them got out. Madison, who had just put on a sun hat and sunglasses, frowned and looked at the old shop that seemed to be a dilapidated building. "This place is really shabby. I suspect there are spider webs everywhere and rats running around. You guys go ahead, I'll wait for you here." She stopped and said. Rob waved his hand, and took Zoe and Queenie past the wooden sign that read "No Gasoline," pushed the door open, and entered the store. "Welcome. There's no gasoline, so the refrigerator is useless and won't cool." The bald boss, who looked to be in his 50s and had a very friendly look, greeted them. "Hello, are there any maps for sale here? We are lost and were originally planning to go." Rob walked over and started talking to the boss. The latter was very enthusiastic. Not only did he take out a map, he also pointed out the location and said, "You guys are really far away. The road here is very difficult to walk on. If you turn back, it will probably take a long time to drive." While the two were talking, Queenie went to the shelf to pick out food. Zoe was strolling around the store, until she saw a huge statue of a humanoid crocodile holding a sickle. Chapter 35, Swamp Tales. "What's this?" Zoe looked at the humanoid crocodile in front of her curiously and was about to touch it with her hand. A sudden voice behind her startled her. "Be careful, don't touch it if you don't want to be eaten by the alligator man." Zoe turned her head quickly and saw a thin old man smiling sinisterly at her. Zoe thought the other party was just trying to scare her, so she was in a good mood. She just frowned and asked, "Crocodile man? What is that? Is it like the legendary Bigfoot?" "Bigfoot? It's just a bunch of savages playing tricks on me," the old man said coldly. "The crocodile man is the real master of this swamp. All the crocodiles, including the dead ones, are his eyes and ears. Once you touch this crocodile skin, you will be sensed by the crocodile man. You should know that he likes to eat the flesh and blood of young people the most. I have heard many stories like this from my grandfather. The only difference is that the crocodile head is replaced by a pig's head, a rabbit's head, a sheep's head, etc." Queenie, who came over for no apparent reason, spoke nonchalantly, and even touched the real crocodile skin on the human-shaped crocodile statue. "I touched it? Where is the alligator man? I'd love to see him." The old man's face suddenly turned pale, and when he was about to start cursing, the bald man held him back, smiled apologetically to everyone and said, "Old John always likes to exaggerate reality. I told you so." Queenie looked as if she knew it. "But it's not untrue," the bald boss said. "Legend has it that there are indeed crocodile people. They ate all the people here. The people living here now are not real natives. Including you, boss." Rob walked over and asked with a smile. The bald boss answered seriously, "Including me, including old John, and including everyone in Fort Collins. Have you ever thought about moving away? After all, there's always a scary crocodile man around. Believe me, some things are scarier than death. Besides, the crocodile man has not appeared in these years, and we just treat it as a story. By the way, we can use this story to develop tourism and attract young people like you to come and play. Unfortunately, you have seen it, it is poorly done." The bald boss laughed at himself, then took out a flyer from the shelf nearby and handed it to Rob. "Grimm's Haunted House, the legendary home of the Crocodile Man." It also records the story of how a man turned into a crocodile man. In the past, you had to pay an entrance fee, but now you can go and see it if you want. Seeing Rob and the other two looking at the flyer, he grinned and said, "Since you've taken the wrong road, you might as well go here and have a look. After all, it's the same everywhere you travel. There are swamps and crocodiles here as well." Haunted house? The crocodile man's hometown? Let's go and take a look," Queenie said expectantly. Ever since Madison had been constantly talking about how she fought against evil spirits and how powerful she was in front of her, Queenie, who didn't want to be outdone, also became interested in this aspect. Zoe was also eager to try. Looking at the expressions of the two girls, although he felt that the current situation was very similar to the plot in Hollywood movies where young people went on vacation in the wild and frequently committed suicide, Rob still nodded in agreement. It's not easy to get out and have fun, so if you take the wrong road, you can't spend most of your time rushing on the road. As for danger, Rob looked at the configuration around him and laughed. Boss, how do I get to the grimly haunted house? He nodded and asked. So the bald boss began to draw the route map enthusiastically. Outside the gas station, Madison, dressed in suspender shorts, a hat, and sunglasses, raised her phone and waved it left and right. What a damn place! Why is the signal so weak? Madison, who originally wanted to post some pretty selfies on Facebook to comfort her few fans, put down her phone unhappily and said speechlessly, "Beauty, are you alone?" A horse-faced man with a toolbox on his back, sweating profusely, passed by and whistled at her, showing his yellow teeth and chatting her up. Madison glanced at the horse-faced man with disdain, and then she didn't even bother to reply and just played with her phone. Such low-quality human males are totally not her type. It's hot. The horse-faced man was unmoved and was about to get closer and closer when the door of the shop opened and the bald boss and Rob and his group came out. The horse-faced man paused, squeezed his lips regretfully, and left quickly. On the other side, after saying goodbye to the bald boss, Rob and his two companions reunited with Madison and returned to the car. Today's destination has been changed temporarily. Rob handed the flyer to Madison, the only one who didn't know. Let's go shopping here first and camp nearby. Grimly Haunted House. Looking at the big title on the flyer, Madison couldn't help but blink speechlessly as she thought of the time when she and Rob spent an afternoon visiting haunted attractions in New Orleans. She then looked down and saw that the flyer told a cliched love thriller story. The only bright spot is probably that the hero and heroine are biological siblings. The brother and sister of the Baoting family lived carefree in the depths of the swamp and reproduced their bloodline. Until one day, a legendary giant crocodile that was much larger than a normal crocodile attacked them and ate the sister and the baby in her belly. Grimly was furious. He ran to the depths of the swamp and fought a huge crocodile. He ate its flesh and blood raw, and also ate his sister's flesh and blood which had not been fully digested. Shit, this is disgusting. So, this is the story? The hero who ate raw crocodiles mutated into a crocodile man and became a horror legend who craves blood and a bride. Madison threw the flyer away in boredom. If such a common story is made into a Hollywood movie, it will definitely be a waste of money. I think it's quite attractive, Zoe said with a little lack of confidence. Madison turned around and said solemnly, "Trust me, Zoe. If you were a producer, you would lose everything." Zoe. "Okay," Rob said, "just treat it as a visit to a historical building. It won't take much time. The boss said there are still intact canoes nearby. We can use them to paddle into the swamp and have some fun. That's why we went out." Yaoki. Hearing this, Madison had no objection. The four people and the car headed towards the grimly haunted house according to the route given by the boss. Inside the gas station, the bald boss who saw Rob and his group off was keeping track of today's bills. The horse-faced man who had flirted with Madison earlier walked in and asked with respect and expectation, "Dad, are those the new sacrifices?" The bald boss still looked kind and said, "They are very lucky." The horse-faced man was immediately delighted, "Indeed. This is their supreme honor. Then shall I go and call for help?" "Go ahead. Blood is blood. Blood is blood." Chapter 36, Drinking and Talking. Following the simple route drawn by the bald boss, Rob drove to the vicinity of the grimly haunted house. There is no road further in. Rob called the three young witches and followed the tattered signposts into the depths of the forest. A quarter of an hour later, a dilapidated thatched hut appeared in everyone's sight. "Is this the famous grimly haunted house? Would that crocodile man condescend to live here?" Madison said amusedly, fanning herself with her hands. Zoe and Queenie were a little disappointed. What they saw was very different from what they had imagined. No wonder the tourism industry hasn't developed here, Rob commented. Since he was already here, he pushed the door open and walked in. Moment. Flutter, flutter, flutter. The bats were instantly awakened, rushed out of the house, and flew towards him at a rapid speed. Rob quickly stepped out of the way. In the following time, a large number of bats woke up from their slumber and flew out of the door like black clouds. Zoe and the other two girls standing behind Rob were so scared that they ran away quickly. Wait until everything is calm. Rob called the three back and shrugged. This is one of the characteristics of the haunted house. Yeah, right. Among the three, only Zoe agreed reluctantly out of respect. Let's go in and take a look. There shouldn't be any bats in there. Rob was the first to enter. It was gray inside. Broken and dirty furniture, plates covered with dust as thick as a finger, blackened and stiff dried meat, bat droppings and spider webs all over the floor. There's nothing special about it, just an old house that has been abandoned for a long time, and there is no trace of the so-called crocodile man. Rob and his four companions came out quickly. The people who hadn't expected there to be anything here were not disappointed. However, they were delighted to find a well-preserved wooden canoe while strolling in a nearby swamp. Obviously, this couldn't have been left behind by that Grim. Thinking that the person was a local who stayed here, Rob and his other three were not polite. Not forgetting their travel plans, they boarded the canoe, paddled, and wandered around in the swamp. Unlike the swamp tourist routes that have long been developed by travel companies, Rob and his crew can better experience the true charm of the swamp in the completely undeveloped pristine area. Soon, Madison saw the crocodile she had been longing for. Following the direction the other party pointed, Rob saw half of a crocodile's head floating on the water, revealing its eyes, ears, and nostrils. Judging from its direction, it seemed to be paying attention to these uninvited guests. Madison was not satisfied just by looking at it. She was eager to try it out and asked, "Do you want to catch it and play with it?" Crocodiles are not to be messed with by normal people. But for a witch like Madison, it's just a toy that can be used at any time. No. Zoe said quickly, "I don't want the boat to sink." The wooden boat below was already at its limit with 4 people on board. Another alligator? Then everyone can only swim back. I can't swim. Queenie also decisively rejected the idea. Madison could only let go with regret. In the following time, relying on his extraordinary physique, Rob paddled the wooden oar easily and led the girls to deeper places. What seems dangerous to others can be easily solved by them, so they can spend their time however they want. However, they did not know that under the dense aquatic plants somewhere, a crocodile head that was much larger than the ones they had seen before was slowly emerging from the water, and its bloodthirsty eyes were staring coldly at the laughter in front of it. It was already dusk. After wandering in the swamp for a long time during the day without encountering any accidents, Rob and his crew came back and drove to a good camping place, where they set up tents and prepared to spend the night. When traveling outdoors, it is common sense to stay out overnight. When it comes to setting up tents, Zoe, Madison, and even Queenie are much more skilled than Rob, a novice. Instead of going over to make things worse, he took out a paramutant knife from the trunk of the car and cut the weeds that were in the way near the camp. He also chopped some firewood to make a fire in the evening. It just so happens that this crescent-shaped, large, and heavy dagger in hand is very suitable for chopping trees. Rob accidentally discovered this knife yesterday when he was rummaging through the academy's utility room. He didn't know which senior bought it, and he didn't know whether it was for camping or for chopping people. In line with the principle of not wasting anything, he brought it here. When Rob returned to the campsite with a large amount of wood, he found that 3 tents had been set up. One for Queenie, one for Madison, and one for himself and Zoe. It makes sense. Originally, Madison thought about destroying a tent and then joining Rob and Zoe's 2-person space. However, After a brief thought, he realized that if he did so, he would most likely sleep with Queenie and would have to endure her huge size and heavy snoring, so he finally gave up. However, in such a good environment, I would be unwilling not to leave some traces like the 3-day road trip. Madison's eyes quickly lit up. Night falls. As Madison watched, flames ignited directly on the woodpile, illuminating the surrounding area. Zoe, who saw this, was very envious and asked, "Madison, how did you do it?" "Talent." Madison raised her chin proudly. "Every witch is born with one or more talents. As time goes by or with emotional stimulation, the power buried deep in the witch's blood will eventually awaken." Queenie hit the nail on the head, just like the last time you were almost killed by the evil spirit and were so scared that you peed your pants, you awakened your fire ability. That's not all. Madison raised her long eyebrows, and her eyes moved when she looked at Queenie. The next second, Queenie, who was eating snacks, paused, then took the initiative to hand the snacks in her hand to Madison. Looking at the greasy, fat hand stretched out in front of him, Madison smiled smugly and rejected it with disdain. "Thank you. You can eat it yourself." After saying that, she withdrew her gaze. Queenie regained consciousness instantly and said in disbelief, "Shit. What just happened?" Zoe was also surprised. She couldn't believe that Queenie would take the initiative to hand food to Madison. "Mind control. Fiona taught me once, and I learned it." Madison told the truth calmly, and took a piece of freshly grilled chicken wing from Rob. "You actually learned a new ability." Zoe's face was filled with shock, envy, and yearning. "Can you teach me how you did it?" She didn't want the last time her boyfriend was in danger and she was powerless to help to happen again, so she wanted to become stronger urgently. "No problem," Madison said generously. Looking at Zoe, who was looking expectant, and Queenie, who was listening attentively although her expression was not very good, she curled her lips, took out a box of beer, patted it and said, "Drink and talk." Chapter 37 Blood is Blood. Late at night. The crackling sounds of the campfire, the clinking of bottles, the gulping, laughter, and the chirping of insects and birds all around combined to paint a beautiful picture of outdoor camping. They said they were going to discuss witches' abilities, but as they drank cup after cup of wine, everyone, including Zoe, stopped being good students and started to enjoy their wonderful vacation. The box of beer I brought was visibly running out of beer. Zoe and Queenie were already drunk. Madison, the main force, was fine. For her, who has always been an alcoholic, this amount of alcohol only made her face red at best. She looked at Rob with fiery eyes. Although he didn't usually drink, Rob still remained sober at 1.5 physique. "That's perfect." Madison glanced at Zoe and Queenie, thinking about asking them to try harder. Queenie suddenly stood up at this time. "I'm going to the bathroom." After saying that, she staggered outside. Rob looked at Queenie, then at Zoe, whose head was already leaning on his shoulder, and wondered if the night would end here. Suddenly, something soft and very pleasant to the touch pressed against his back, and a tempting voice with a hint of alcohol rang in his ears. "It's nice to be here. Depend on. Are you playing so extravagantly?" Rob, who knew who it was without having to guess, sighed that the old driver was the old driver. With the two girls in his arms, he was about to reject them righteously when his ears suddenly moved. The next second, Rob's eyes fixed and he turned his head to look ahead, into the depths of the dark forest beyond the campfire. "What's wrong?" As Madison said this, her two little hands painted with rose nail polish could not wait to split into two groups and occupy the key points. Rob quickly held them down. He said with a serious expression, "Wait, something seems wrong around here." His physique, which is much stronger than that of normal people, gives him good hearing. Just at that moment, he seemed to hear another sound of crushed dead branches and leaves in the other direction where Queenie left. At first Rob thought it was caused by a small animal passing by. But when he listened more carefully, he found something wrong. It's too quiet. The dense forest before was filled with all kinds of rustling noises, and it was quite lively. But listening to it again now, it seems eerily quiet. Animals are very sensitive. If they behave like this, it is very likely that an uninvited guest has arrived, which they are very afraid of. Rob squeezed Madison's palm harder. Madison's eyes quickly regained clarity. In the previous fight against evil spirits, she and Rob had developed a lot of tacit understanding. She looked around casually and whispered, "Is there something going on?" Rob nodded. "Is there any way to sober him up? Regardless of whether there is real danger or not, Zoe must stay awake in this situation. Hangover pills, a must-have for Hollywood stars." Madison picked up the bag on the ground, took out a pill from the small medicine box, and without wasting time, directly controlled Zoe's mind and made her swallow the pill. The medicine I took effect quickly. Zoe touched her forehead and stood up from Rob's shoulder, and asked in confusion, "What's wrong with me?" Rob explained the current situation in a low voice. Zoe was startled, but with her boyfriend, Madison, who didn't look panicky, by her side, she quickly calmed herself down. Rob didn't delay any further. He looked worriedly in the direction where there had been no movement since Queenie left. In order to avoid any more trouble, he suddenly said loudly, "Come out, I've seen you." 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute. Like the gaping mouth of an abyss, there was not a single sound in the dark forest, waiting for its prey to arrive. Rob, who seemed to be performing a comedy show, did not stop and said, "Your footsteps just now have exposed you. Come out. My companions and I don't like such pranks. Come over and have a drink. These two ladies need a gentleman to accompany them." Snap. The next second after Rob finished speaking, the unmistakable sound of footsteps rang clearly in his ears. Perhaps he was tricked out by Rob, or perhaps because of the temptation of the last sentence, the lady's invitation, a dark shadow walked out of the dense forest. Recently, there have been crocodiles attacking people at night. I am responsible for patrolling this area. I hope I did not disturb you. I heard that there are fine wines and beautiful women here. I wonder which lady can pour a glass of wine for a responsible person like me. Some familiar voices sounded in Madison's ears. She looked up and found that it was the horse-faced man who had tried to hit on her during the day. At this moment, the horse-faced man was wearing a stab-proof suit that was convenient for walking in the jungle, and was carrying a shotgun. He really looked like someone who was patrolling here. If you ignore his greedy eyes that were constantly scanning Madison, and by the way, looking at the fresh and innocent Zoe with surprise. The quality of the sacrifices this time is really great. Anyway, the great gods only need reproductive tools. I will ask for them after they complete their reproductive mission. The horse-faced man was delighted. Just as he was thinking about it, Rob suddenly asked, "Are you alone?" "Of course not only." The horse-faced man reacted and immediately shut up. He gripped the shotgun tightly and subconsciously looked at Rob. Bang! Gunshots rang out. Not the shotgun in his hand, but the Glock in Rob's hand. Thump! There was a sound of someone falling to the ground. Until the horse-faced man closed his eyes, he couldn't figure out why Rob suddenly shot him. How could he? How dare he? Of course Rob dared. He is not one of those mentally retarded young men in horror movies. Who the hell is patrolling the jungle so late at night? He was the first one who did not believe that the American people had such a spirit of craftsmanship. Besides, do you really think he doesn't know that it is common sense that crocodiles hunt mainly during the day and not at night? The combination of late at night, lurking nearby, holding a gun, being lustful, and lying, etc., has given Rob sufficient reason to shoot. The situation where a man has a gun but hesitates to make the final move and ends up being killed by the villain will never happen to him. As for the possibility of killing the wrong person, it's a mistake to kill someone. Just consider it as a small contribution to alleviating the population pressure on the earth. Rob killed the horse-faced man without any guilt or regret in his heart. Without any pause, he waved his hand and extinguished the campfire, and the camp instantly became dark. Next second. Bang. 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 Various gunshots rang out continuously, and wood chips kept flying where the campfire had been. FK. Exposed. That idiot Vincent can't even delay time. What a loser. Chase them. They're running away. Don't shoot. The woman must be alive. Chase. 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 In an instant, the originally quiet forest became extremely lively. Under the illumination of torches, faces of men, women, young and old emerged from the darkness, shouting their slogans in unison with great enthusiasm. Blood is blood. Blood is blood. Blood is blood. Chapter 38 The greatest discovery of the century. The moment he killed the horse-faced man, Rob, who knew that the other man was not alone, extinguished the fire immediately, quickly pulled Zoe and Madison, and ran in the direction where Queenie had left before under the cover of darkness. We can't leave the other person alone in this dangerous place. Behind them, a group of people who were no longer hiding came chasing them with torches and guns, shouting slogans fanatically. It's really bad luck that I ended up in the lair of a cult. Rob looked back and saw the bald boss he had met at the gas station, old John, was among them, looking unlucky. Although I have heard that in this free land, there are many kinds of cults that breathe the breath of freedom. But in his original imagination, these people were similar to those pyramid schemes in China that defrauded old ladies and grandfathers of their money, or the cults that were rampant in South Korea and engaged in financial scams. But who would have thought that America is America? Even the cult reveals an unusual wild temperament. Judging from the other party's posture, it was obvious that they wanted to sacrifice them alive. Madison's attitude is pretty good. Perhaps it's because I've seen too many strange and bizarre sects in Hollywood. After all, Hollywood stars who have little education, are stupid, have a lot of money, are decadent, and are empty are quite easy to be fooled. She even had the interest to tease Zoe at this time. Zoe, now is the time for you to wake up. Rob needs your protection. Zoe really listened to it and looked eager to take action. Rob didn't expect his girlfriend to be so bold. He quickly held her down and glared at Madison fiercely, saying, "Are you looking for death? Facing dozens of guns, do you think you are King Kong? No matter how powerful a witch is, she is still a mortal. If she is hit by a bullet, she will fall to the ground. Otherwise, witches would have become the masters of the world long ago, instead of hiding from place to place for fear of being discovered. No matter how strong Madison is now, it is impossible for him to deal with dozens of people at once. Even Rob, who hasn't grown into Superman yet, can't do it. Naturally, you should apply oil on the soles of your feet first. After we find Queenie, create some distance between us and let these guys disperse. It won't be too late to turn around and attack them again." Rob didn't think about running away. He spent more than $20,000 on the car, and left it here after only driving it for a few days. The moon hangs high in the night sky, shining its light on the earth, covering the vegetation with a layer of bright moonlight, which is very beautiful. It's a pity that no one appreciates it. A hunting activity that has existed since the birth of mankind is going on in the dense forest. Guided by the moonlight, the torch-bearing Fort Collins cultists, led by the bald boss, closely pursued Rob and his group. Jonah, the bald boss, is actually very depressed. Originally, he wanted to defeat them one by one without harming the sacrifice, first taking down Queenie, and then dealing with the two women in the camp. Unexpectedly, not only did something go wrong with Queenie who had succeeded first, but Rob and his gang were so alert that they escaped first and shot Vincent dead with one shot. Are these people definitely students? Jonah was confused. Just thinking about the revelation God gave him, he desired the three women this time more than any previous sacrifice. Jonah, who had to complete this task, shouted with a ferocious look on his face. "Speed up! Speed up! Blood is blood! Blood is blood!" The group of cultists seemed to be given an injection of chicken blood and moved faster. Seeing the backs of Rob and his group in sight, Jonah shouted with a smile, "Everyone, it's not safe at night, don't run anymore. Come back, we will treat you warmly." Rob wasn't interested. Madison, on the other hand, turned around and sneered, "Entertainment? Become a sacrifice to that ugly pervert." Jonah's face was filled with anger. "That is the great lord of the swamp, the incarnation of the gods in the world, the greatest miracle. As a sacrifice, you were chosen by him to give birth to his noble bloodline. It is your supreme honor." Madison was surprised and said, "Crocodile people can do that? This is the greatest discovery of the century." Zoe looked disgusted. She had originally thought that this group of people were going to sacrifice her and others, but she had never expected that their real purpose would be like this. Rob was also speechless. He didn't expect that the cult he encountered this time would be so bizarre. Hold on tight. Rob invested 10 shelter points to bring his physical strength to 1.6. As his strength grew further, he simply picked up Zoe and Madison, who were running slowly, and ran forward at a faster pace. With her feet off the ground and her long hair flying in the wind, Zoe asked in surprise, "Rob, how come you are so powerful?" "Of course he's strong." Madison, who didn't have to run away, said excitedly, "His physique is getting stronger and stronger visibly." There will be no this inserted audio clip if you buy the software license key or activation key. By the way, Rob, was your ancestor a behemoth? Did you awaken the power of your bloodline? Rob rolled his eyes. "There are no behemoths in the Celestial Empire." Madison asked excitedly, "What should that be?" "Dragon." Jonah, who had no idea that the prey ahead even had time to chat, couldn't help but get anxious when he saw Rob, who was leading two people alone, was getting faster and faster as if he had taken drugs. If he is like this, what about those believers? The prey was almost gone, and in their excitement, these people no longer obeyed the order not to shoot, and the sounds of long and short gunshots suddenly echoed in the dense forest. However, it was a big fuss, but had no effect at all. It was already dark ahead, with many trees, and Rob was moving very fast. It would be unreasonable if you could hit the target accurately when shooting from a long distance. The cooked duck was about to disappear from sight. Sudden. A huge black shadow with a thick tail flashed past them and chased after Rob and his group at an extremely fast speed. Watching this scene, it was as if they saw the Lord coming to the world. All the cultists, including Jonah, sang the obscure and strange hymn with great piety and enthusiasm at this moment. Walking with God. We save her soul. Control her head and hands. It's her honor. We're going to give her a new lease of life. We will have a better life. We are still alive. It has always been His will. Great Lord. We'll control her torso, head, and limbs. How glorious we are. We will bring life to Him. We will always obey His will. Ahead. The cultists made such a big noise that Rob and his companions naturally heard it. What the hell are they yelling about? Madison asked puzzled. It seems to be a prayer poem to the evil god. Zoe, who had been to the church before, said uncertainly. Rob was about to speak. Sudden. His face changed. Careful. Chapter 39, Crocodile Man. The sharp claws slashed across the heads of Rob and the others like a poisonous snake spitting silk. If Rob hadn't reacted quickly and rolled on the ground with Zoe and Madison in his arms, the skulls of himself and others would have been blown off. When the three of them stood up again, a huge black shadow blocked their way. Rob frowned. Under the moonlight, a humanoid crocodile with a huge crocodile head, covered with scales and dragging a thick long tail, was opening its bloody mouth full of sharp teeth towards them ferociously. So there really are crocodile people, Zoe said in a daze as she watched this scene. Where is its fuck organ? This was what Madison paid attention to first. Noticing that the book of shelter in his mind was emitting a scarlet light, Rob showed no joy when he knew that new goods had arrived. There are dozens of guns behind. He quickly said, Madison, mind control. No. Madison immediately looked at the alligator man. In an instant, the crocodile man, whose cognition was briefly tampered with and who just wanted to stand there stupidly, paused. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Rob pulled out the Glock and shot the crocodile man in the head. Bang! The scales broke and dark green blood flowed out. One good news, one bad news. The good news is that judging from the performance of the crocodile man, bullets are a threat to him, unlike the previous evil spirits and minotaurs who completely ignored hot weapons. The bad news is that the crocodile man broke free from the mind control in advance and raised his arm in time to take the bullet instead of his head. Its mental resistance ability is much stronger than that of a normal person. Madison frowned and explained quickly. Come again. Control it for 1 second if you can. Rob is about to use the same old trick to continue to work with Madison. The crocodile man looked at them fearfully, then disappeared into the darkness in a flash. The previous confrontation scared it. But it didn't go far. Realizing that the sacrifices this time were unusual and that it was in great danger facing them alone, it lingered near Rob and the others for the next period of time, constantly harassing them so that the believers behind could catch up and capture it together. Sly beast. Although he knew what the crocodile man was thinking, Rob was unable to do anything about it for a while because he was in the opponent's home court and visibility was low. Fortunately, after running such a long distance, although the cultists behind were chasing them, they had been dispersed a lot due to their physical strength and were dragged into a long queue. Now you won't be facing dozens of guns at once. It's time to kill them. Rob knew that continuing to flee in the wilderness without any supplies would lead to bad consequences, so he stopped and prepared to defeat the cultists one by one while they were in disarray. It should have been done a long time ago. Madison smiled grimly, turned around, and hooked his finger at the cultist who was closest to him and was shouting excitedly. Moment. As the cultist looked confused and terrified, he flew towards her uncontrollably. Devil, devil. Looking at the stunningly beautiful Madison in front of him, the previously fanatical cultist said with a pale face and trembling. It's funny that cultists actually accuse others of being devils. Madison waved her hand. Snap. The man in front of him turned his neck 360 degrees, and he was deader than dead. Can you use a gun? Madison took the shotgun from the corpse's hand without changing his expression and handed it to Zoe. Certainly. Zoe glanced at the man who died in a horrible way, then skillfully fiddled with the shotgun. Although she looks weak on the surface, she is also capable of playing human body puzzles in the morgue. Kill or be killed, it is a matter of no hesitation. Rob and the young witches begin to fight back. Faced with the harassment of bullets, telekinesis, fire, and mind control, the fastest cultists were easily killed without even a sound. Before the people behind could react, Rob and his two companions had already rushed over, and quickly submerged the former as he looked ignorant, as if the fish had taken the bait. Before long, some of the fish that escaped the net finally shouted in horror, "Witches! They are witches with devil powers." You guessed right. Madison looked at the person who had spoken. The latter's face changed and he hurriedly dropped his shotgun, holding down his neck with both hands, which suddenly moved, to prevent it from twisting backwards. But it didn't work. With a click. A moment later, his cervical vertebrae were broken and he died beyond demise. But there is one thing you said that is wrong. A witch is a witch, but there is nothing devilish about her. Now, let you feel the wrath of the witch, you rubbish. The constant killings made Madison's heart, which was originally suppressed by social rules and regulations, become violent and arrogant. I just saw her eyes sweeping forward. Moment. The raging flames turned into a long fire dragon that burned violently in front and spread rapidly. That's not all. Zoe on the side seemed to be stimulated and inspired by Madison. Her eyes moved, and the same flame was summoned by her. Under the joint spell of the two witches, screams came out from the mouths of the cultists who were unable to dodge. Ah ah ah! Their whole bodies were set on fire and turned into torches. No matter how frantically they struggled, it was in vain. In the end, they turned into balls of charcoal and fell to the ground. The other cultists who were farther away and had managed to escape this disaster looked at the sea of fire in front of them and their companions who were wailing in pain in the fire with great fear. Old John, who had once explained the legend of the crocodile man to Zoe at the gas station, looked at the flames rising into the sky and said in a daze, "Oh my God! What kind of enemy have we provoked?" It was like a bucket of cold water was poured down. No one expected that they would meet the legendary witch this time. And it's so strong. Although there were still quite a few people, they were already terrified and no longer had the passion they had before, and they were already thinking of running away. Roar! Suddenly, a deafening roar sounded. The cultists' faces suddenly changed, and they stopped short of retreating. God is angry. God is rebuking us for our cowardice. Jonah, the gas station owner and leader of this cult group, shouted angrily. Where is your loyalty to God? Do you want to go against God's will? Everyone shook their heads in panic. Jonah shouted loudly, Don't retreat. Raise your guns. For God. For our bright future. Capture those witches. They will be the best sacrifice. Blood is blood. Blood is blood. Years of faith eventually overwhelmed fear. While praying loudly, the remaining cultists, with resolute faces, launched another attack under the leadership of Jonah. At the same time, the crocodile man who gave orders to the believers also took action. Chapter 40, Fight. The crocodile man originally wanted to wait for his followers to take the sacrifice in one fell swoop, and then come out to clean up the mess himself. Unexpectedly, the group of people that it had placed high hopes on almost collapsed first. There was no other way. After stabilizing the situation, it had to take action to prevent the sacrifice from escaping. After he mutated into a crocodile man, as time went by, the sanity of the man named Grimly Boding quickly dissipated, and was replaced by an endless desire for flesh and blood and reproduction. Flesh and blood are the desire of the big crocodile itself, reproduction is its last remaining human desire. The pain of the death of its unborn child and the desire to pass on its bloodline made it eager to give birth to its own offspring even after it transformed into a crocodile man. However, none of the female sacrifices captured in the past were able to successfully conceive their own offspring. But this time it's different. This time, the female sacrifice possesses a mysterious power that scares it yet makes it addicted. This power contained in their bodies can definitely enable them to shoulder the responsibility of reproduction and even make their offspring stronger. Therefore, we must never let it leave. The crocodile man took action. In the dense woodland, its movements were not affected at all. It quickly bypassed the witch's sight, and with a sudden kick of its scaly sturdy legs, it pounced on the unsuspecting witches at lightning speed. A dark shadow rushed from the slope and knocked it to the ground. I've been waiting for you. With his body pressed against the crocodile man, Rob drew out his Palin dagger and slashed at him fiercely with the broad and sharp blade. In the previous counterattack, when Madison and even Zoe were showing their prowess, Rob, except for occasionally firing a few shots, spent most of the time guarding against the crocodile man hiding in the dark. Although these young witches are powerful, they are just weaklings once the enemy gets close to them. After all, a witch's physical fitness is comparable to that of an ordinary person. In addition, the teaching in witch schools, which has been peaceful for a long time, is to let girls control their abilities instead of training them to become killers, dark wizards, etc. If they really had to face a life and death battle face to face, instead of being at a certain distance like this and having the ability to release their abilities behind cover, their performance would not be much better than that of ordinary people. Swish. The short knife was down, reflecting the bright light under the moonlight. The crocodile man quickly raised his hands to block. Click. Scales shattered, green blood splattered, and the sharp blade sank deep into the flesh. "Is that all you are?" Rob grinned. "As long as the enemy can be destroyed on a physical level, it's not a problem." Stamina, 1.6 stamina, 1.8. At this point, Rob, who naturally would not be stingy with the investment in the collection point, held the hilt of the knife tightly in his hand. The Palin knife, which can easily chop down large trees, carries more power and is about to cut off the crocodile man's arm in one fell swoop. A sharp sound of breaking through the air suddenly came from behind. Rob frowned and rolled over immediately. The next second, a thick crocodile tail swept past where he was and hit the tree next to him. In an instant, there was a loud boom and a big hole appeared in the tree. The tree trembled and soon fell to the ground under the weight. Roar! The crocodile man quickly stood up, opened his 10 fingers like hooks, and pounced towards Rob with a surging wind and great anger. Rob snorted coldly, replaced his left hand with a knock, and fired several shots at the opponent. By the time the crocodile man was forced to stop and dodge, Rob, who had put away his gun, had already approached him, wielding a heavy dagger and slashing at the opponent repeatedly. Although he has never learned any sword skills. But when it comes to killing people, all it takes is speed, accuracy, and ruthlessness. With his extraordinary physique, he did a great job in this regard. "Hey! Rob, get out of the way." Seeing Rob and the crocodile man fighting fiercely, Madison and Zoe, who were not blind, also turned their eyes. They originally wanted to help, but they found that the man and the beast were moving too fast, and they were entangled together, so they couldn't find the right time to take action, which led to Madison's shouting. "Is this something that can be waived?" Rob took the time to reply. Believe it or not, as soon as he pulled away, the crocodile man ran away. "I really thought the other party was those stupid cultists at the beginning." With the lesson learned from the initial mind control, the crocodile man would no longer stand there stupidly. In addition, with a speed that only he could keep up with, it was no longer so easy for the witches to aim at the other party's spell-casting ability. Not to mention the crocodile people, the cultists who are still alive have learned their lesson and are no longer exposed to the witches' sight like before, which has also led to the witches' increasingly less successful results. The gunshots were getting closer. One even ricocheted and narrowly missed Rob's feet. He was startled and said quickly, "You guys focus on dealing with those cultists. I'll take care of this ugly guy." Madison and Zoe did so. The crocodile man, as the enemy, was unwilling to do so. Its fundamental purpose is to be a witch who can give birth to offspring for it, not Rob. Realizing that Rob was not so easy to kill, it found the right moment, swung its tail, and while Rob was dodging, it took the opportunity to distance itself and ran towards the witches. A strong hand grabbed its tail in time. How can a beast be better than a human when it comes to scheming? As Rob smiled coldly, a sharp knife flashed and half of the crocodile's tail fell to the ground. Roar! The crocodile man suddenly let out a long howl of extreme pain. In anger, it no longer cared about the witch. It turned around, stood up with its 2-meter-tall body, and rushed towards Rob ferociously. Rob, who was well prepared, quickly turned his body when the other party approached, and then pushed the crocodile man hard. In an instant, the crocodile man, who couldn't stop himself, missed his step while running forward. It turned out that there was a hillside behind Rob. It couldn't help but fall down. But before that, it deliberately swung most of its tail. Rob, who failed to dodge completely, stumbled and fell down. In an instant, the man and the beast fell rapidly, hitting a large number of bushes and branches along the way. When all the noise was over, the thick-skinned crocodile man was the first to get up from the ground. Not far away, Rob, who was lucky enough to be fine except for choking on a mouthful of mud, quickly stood up, grabbed the dagger that fell on the ground, and with a clang, blocked the incoming sharp claws. Bang! 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 Rob's free left hand drew the knock again and fired. Seeing this, the crocodile man, who had been on guard, dodged to the side. Although if it is really hit by these shots it will not die. But little by little it adds up. It's okay to fight with others while dragging your injured body. It would be unwise to face this incredibly powerful human being in front of him. And this is exactly what Rob wanted.